I'm quitting. Chin-ge slammed her resignation letter down on her boss's desk. Her boss, who was also her paternal uncle, lifted his head and shot her a sharp glance, his small eyes brimming with irritation. Countless graduates can't land a job these days. I took you into my company out of respect for your late parents. Instead of being grateful, you want to quit. I'm quitting. Chin-ge's expression remained calm as she restated her decision. Uncle Chin slammed the table hard, his voice sharp and furious. I've been far too lenient with you. I haven't even settled scores for all your unapproved absences before. Don't think just because you're my niece I'll let you get away with anything. Unapproved absences? A cold laugh escaped Chin-ge, stung by his words. Her maternal grandmother had been critically ill, and she'd asked for leave to see her for the final time and arrange her funeral, but the company had rejected her request. A dying person couldn't wait, so she'd left regardless of the denial. Memories of her newly departed grandmother made Chin-ge lose the composure she'd clung to for so long. She clenched her fists, pounding the desk with dull thuds. I started interning here back in my 3rd year of university, working unpaid overtime every single day. I drafted marketing plans, secured sponsorships, and ran ad campaigns, shouldering work meant for 3 people alone. I covered your son's tracks and paved the way for his career. I bore all of it silently, simply because you're my uncle. You wouldn't even approve bereavement leave for me. What right do you have to criticize me? Uncle Chin let out a sneer. So, what if I denied it? You're an orphan from the countryside. The only way you'll ever secure a stable life in the city is by slaving away for me. I'm doing this for your own good. Look at the state of you right now. Disgust dripped from Uncle Chin's tone. No makeup, no heels, you're even wearing jeans. How long do you think you'll hold onto your looks? Once you pass 21, you'll be considered an older unmarried woman. Staring at Uncle Chin's self-righteous face, Chin-ge strangely calmed down. She'd let his manipulative words get to her before because she'd clung to foolish hopes for family affection. Now she saw his true character clearly, and arguing with him would only waste her breath. Chin-ge tapped the resignation letter on the desk. Either sign it, or I'll bring stacks of the company's internal records to the Market Supervision Bureau and stage a public protest there. The choice is yours. For 4 years, she'd climbed from an intern to the core backbone of the business. The confidential violations she knew about would cripple the company if even a fraction were exposed. Leaning forward slightly, her hands braced on the edge of the desk, Chin-ge fixed him with a steady gaze. I'm giving you this much consideration because we're still related. Don't force us into mutual ruin. She had nothing to lose, while he had everything to protect. Chin-ge's dark hair fell messily around her face, her large black eyes locked unblinkingly on him, carrying the weight of years of suppressed grievance. Uncle Chin froze, realizing he could no longer fool Chin-ge. But an unwilling employee was useless to keep around. Reluctantly, he scrawled his signature across the letter. I suppose you've inherited your grandmother's estate and plan to run a countryside bed and breakfast, Uncle Chin scoffed with contempt. Throwing away a decent urban office job to go muck about in rural dirt. You'll get no steady salary out there. Do you honestly think you can support yourself running that place? Chin-ge let out a cold laugh. That's none of your concern. Her resignation was no impulsive decision. The previous day, she'd unexpectedly awakened the Miracle Villa farming management system. Completing system tasks would earn her rewards, leading her to complete financial freedom. Handing in her notice and returning to her hometown was the first task the system had assigned her. Even without the system, she would have quit, but the system gave her unshakable confidence. Chin-ge picked up her signed resignation letter. Chin-xiong, you have no right to speak of my parents. If you truly miss them, burn more paper offerings for my father, and pray he calls you to join him early. She knew exactly how to trade harsh words back. You. Uncle Chin's face turned livid with rage, his pointing finger trembling nonstop. Chin-ge's features stayed blank. I'm leaving. No need to see me out. Chin-ge walked past her colleagues, met with stares ranging from shock and envy to disdain, and settled her final paycheck at the HR office. Stepping out through the company's front doors, she flipped the building a blunt middle finger. No more scraping by to pay rent, no more soul-crushing overtime marathons, no more being drained dry by exploitative employers with nothing saved to show for it. A wave of pure lightness washed over Chin-ge. She silently wished her uncle would face consequences for his greed and unfair treatment of staff. Back inside the office, Uncle Chin summoned his son Chin Zixing, ordering him to send people to keep tabs on Chin-ge once she returned to the village. She has no funds or connections. Her little bed and breakfast will never stay afloat. Qin Zixing thought his father was overreacting. Uncle Qin shook his head. Don't underestimate her. She oversaw most of our company's homestay and resort projects. He never wanted Qingge to leave, all her expertise wasted when it could have benefited his own son's advancement. Qin Zixing remained unconvinced. Even if she somehow gets the homestay running, she can't compete with us. A tiny countryside bed and breakfast stood no chance against their tourism corporation with thousands of employees. Uncle Qin frowned sharply. Just do as I told you and keep an eye on her. Qingge traveled by high-speed rail, regular train, long-distance bus, and local transit one after another. For the final stretch of the journey, village chief Uncle Su gave her a ride on his tricycle. He'd run into her on his way to town. Why'd you decide to come back? The village is inconvenient in every way, and the roads are rough as anything. Qingge tightened her grip on her suitcase handle and nodded. They certainly are. The bumpy ride had left her lower back throbbing fiercely. Once her homestay opened, repairing the village roads would be her top priority. Aren't you still working for your uncle? Uncle Su asked curiously. Qingge wrinkled her nose in distaste. I quit. I'm starting a business back home. Uncle Su smiled faintly. Fair enough. He didn't believe she was truly set on launching a business. Their village was small, run-down, and impoverished, with terrible transport that made selling farm goods nearly impossible. What could she possibly hope to accomplish here? He suspected she'd just suffered too much mistreatment from her uncle and come home to rest for a while. A break from city work would do her good, at the very least. Uncle Su dropped her off and hurried off before she could offer payment, waving his hand quickly. I can't take money from a younger person. Keep it for yourself. Qingge failed to catch up to him to insist on repaying the favor. Bending over to catch her breath, her body ached from travel, yet her heart felt warm. It had been far too long since she'd received genuine, unselfish kindness from another person. Once she'd recovered her strength, Qingge circled her grandmother's old property to survey the land. There was a vegetable plot, 2 mu of fish ponds, 3 to 4 mu of rice paddies. The land spanned a wide area, yet every plot lay abandoned, overgrown with weeds reaching mid-calf height. The hills behind the property were thick with bamboo, tall, straight, and vivid green. This entire stretch of mountains and farmland had all been left to Qingge by her grandmother. After finishing her walk and mapping out her plans, she headed into the old wooden house. It was a traditional 3-story timber residence with more than a dozen rooms of varying sizes. Carved wooden window frames, red lacquered beams, polished brass lock rings, every detail carried quiet beauty, yet the whole structure was worn and dilapidated. The ground floor remained usable, but the second and third floors were unlivable for now. The timber itself was sturdy, untouched by wood rot, yet most of the paint had peeled away, and there were no modern furnishings to speak of. Worst of all, the space lacked the familiar presence of her grandmother tending to the home. Tears stung Qingge's eyes. She'd spent her entire childhood living alongside her grandmother. She knew how breathtaking this land's quiet natural charm could be, and she hoped to preserve that simple beauty and share it with visitors from all walks of life. That was the core reason she wanted to open a homestay. Pulling herself together, Qingge called upon the system to claim her rewards and view available tasks. Host has resigned and inherited the mountain villa. Distributing opening rewards now. 10 kilograms premium rice, flour, cooking oil, and grains each, 100 fresh eggs, 2 cartons of milk. Permanent plus 100 structural integrity for all buildings on the property. The system had stocked basic staples to keep her from going hungry, but there was a problem. She had no idea how to cook on a traditional clay stove. When she was little, her grandmother had never let her step foot in the kitchen. Villagers would gossip, saying her grandmother spoiled the girl rotten. What would she do once the elder passed away? Her grandmother would laugh it off each time. When I'm gone, her mother and father will still be here. She's their only child, of course I'll dote on her. Recalling those words, Qingge's eyes grew damp. She tilted her head upward and blinked hard to hold back tears. Life was full of unforeseen loss. She'd never imagined everyone who'd loved her most would leave her behind. From now on, she would have to learn to cook for herself. Qingge let out a slow breath, and the system's emotionless mechanical tone pulled her attention away from her sorrow. Host, new task issued. Display task details. Homestay renovation task activated. Objective, refurbish the old residence to full operational standards for guest stays. Deadline, 2 months. Reward, 1 million renminbi, plus one random bonus reward. A million yuan? For someone newly unemployed and penniless, it was like a parched traveler stumbling across an oasis after 7 days wandering the desert. The 2-month deadline surprised her, though. The system clearly held high faith in her ability. Refurbishing the entire wooden house to host paying guests was an enormous undertaking, and the random bonus reward only added to her curiosity. Even without the extra surprise, the million yuan prize alone motivated her to push through every hardship, earning that sum would take her decades of saving with a regular salary. The road to restoring the old villa stretched long before her. Chinga glanced around the neglected property. The house had sat empty for half a year, weeds swallowing the yard front and back. First, she would need to clear all overgrown vegetation. The wooden furniture required fresh tung oil to restore its finish, and modern appliances, water heaters, washing machines, refrigerators, and more would need to be purchased and installed. Her immediate priority, however, was cleaning and setting up a livable private room for herself, then working floor by floor to deep clean the rest of the house. Refinishing antiques and shopping for new furnishings would come later, tackled bit by bit as time allowed. Chinga mentally prodded the system. I can't finish all this work single-handedly, not even if I work myself ragged. Aren't you going to lend a hand? The system alert chimed. New task activated. Objective: hire one staff member through the system portal. Daily wage settlement available. Deadline: 24 hours. Reward: deluxe double-serving braised chicken rice feast, 250-liter household refrigerator. Accept task? Accept. Qin Ji's face lit up. This advanced otherworldly system truly anticipated her every need. She'd been worrying about tomorrow's lunch, and the system immediately granted a hearty 2-person braised chicken meal, plus a practical full-size refrigerator. System, are you playing some kind of joke on me? Chinga stood amid thick hillside weeds, utterly confused. She'd submitted a hiring request through the system, only to be told to head up the back mountain to meet her new employee. She voiced her confusion aloud. No one lives up the back mountain, and there's no trail connecting it to the village or town. How could a hired worker possibly come from there? Bamboo Village sat nestled in a river valley sandwiched between 3 mountain ranges. Its location held both advantages and drawbacks. Industrial zones and major cities lay not far away, yet the triple mountain barrier deterred all real estate developers. Farming yielded minimal profit, so nearly all young and middle-aged villagers left to seek manual labor jobs in cities. Only the elderly, women, and children remained in the village. No residents occupied the back mountain slopes whatsoever. Chinga couldn't fathom who she was meant to meet here. The back mountain carried a reputation for strange local legends, rarely visited by anyone. Villagers whispered that wild human-like creatures roamed the woods on her grandmother's land. A flicker of panic crossed Qin Ji's mind. Could the system have assigned her a feral hermit as staff? The system responded immediately. Host, please disregard folk superstitions and tall tales. Chinga muttered, as long as whoever you send is capable of hard labor, I'll trust you for now. The moment her words faded, a figure appeared along the narrow mountain path ahead. Chinga brightened and hurried forward. You must be the cleaning staff I hired? The woman lifted her head. Upon laying eyes on Qin Ji's face, she froze completely. Chinga froze too, frantically questioning the system in her thoughts. Where had it sourced someone who looked like a displaced refugee? The woman standing before her was shockingly gaunt, her cheekbones and eye sockets sunken deep, lips cracked and dry, her skin a sickly sallow yellow without a hint of color. Her hair, straw pale and brittle, was twisted into a loose bun secured only by a wooden twig. The ragged cloth wrapped around her frame barely qualified as clothing, just enough to modestly cover her body. It was unfathomable to Chinga that someone could live in such extreme deprivation in the modern era. Could this woman handle rigorous homestay cleaning work? What if she collapsed mid-shift from malnutrition? The system replied flatly. Staff assignments are randomly generated by the system. Host must honor this fated encounter. Chinga fell speechless. With a dull thud, the woman dropped to her knees before Chinga, tears welling in her eyes, voice trembling with emotion. Songjin, head mistress of the Palace Women's Bureau, greets Your Highness Princess Chinga. Qin Ji's mind blanked. Had the system sent her someone suffering from delusions? Please stand up at once. Chinga rushed forward to pull her upright. Songjin pressed her forehead to the earth, refusing to rise. I failed to reach your side in time to shield you, Your Highness. Please grant me mercy for my negligence. Qin Ji's scalp prickled with unease, baffled by the bizarre ancient royal titles. She tugged at the woman's arms, yet she remained glued to the ground, sending a chill skittering down Qin Ji's spine. "Stand up now, as you command." The woman rose obediently. Qin Ge stared, utterly perplexed. Songjin could no longer contain her overwhelming emotion, disregarding traditional rank etiquette to study Qin Ji's features closely. She had long believed the princess dead. Every surviving subject of the fallen Qin kingdom thought their royal bloodline had perished during their desperate exile. Never had she imagined their beloved princess had survived, dwelling in an entirely foreign world beyond their understanding. Songjin had served as head mistress of the Palace Women's Bureau, the highest-ranking female court official of Qing. On the day the kingdom fell, she'd followed the late queen's final order, protect the princess and flee the capital. Mid-escape, enemy soldiers had ambushed their party, and the princess had vanished without a trace. In the chaos of war and blade strikes, survival had seemed impossible. The princess had been the heart and guiding light of all Qing refugees. With her presumed death, any hope of restoring their kingdom had crumbled entirely. Songjin had led the remaining survivors to take shelter at the foot of a distant mountain. Yet, stripped of their figurehead, their community had withered amid successive years of famine. On the brink of starvation, she knelt each night before the princess's portrait to pray, begging fate not to seal their tragic end. The previous night, she'd heard a faint voice echo from the painting, answering her desperate pleas. Recalling the endless hardship her people had endured, Songjin broke down into tearful sobs. "Your Highness." "Stop right there." Qin Ge held up a hand to cut her off. "If you keep calling me princess, I'll be upset. You can address me as the boss instead." "How could a servant dare?" Qin Ge stamped her foot lightly in exasperation. "There are no princesses or servants here, not anymore." Songjin stared blankly, realization dawning. The Qing kingdom was gone. All royal titles and servant hierarchies belonged to a lost age. "Everyone holds equal standing here," Qin Ge told her firmly. "That old hierarchical mindset is outdated and harmful." She shook her head firmly to emphasize her point. "As you command," Songjin replied instinctively, the ancient court response slipping out before she could catch herself. "Tell me your proper name," again, Qin Ge prompted. Songjin hesitated, caught herself upon seeing Qin Ji's stern expression, and corrected her words immediately. "My name is Songjin." Confusion swirled in her heart. Could the princess have lost all her memories of their homeland? Songjin dared to gaze at Qin Ge once more. Her delicate arched brows, phoenix-shaped eyes, refined nose, and soft lips remained unchanged, just as beautiful as she remembered. Yet her clothing and speech were unrecognizable. Her bare pale arms were exposed to open air. Was this standard dress in this strange new world? Songjin glanced quickly at Qin Ji's forearms before jerking her gaze away, flustered. Qin Ge led Songjin back to the old wooden house and tore open a carton of milk to hand her. The woman looked far too undernourished, like she hadn't eaten properly in months, and Qin Ge had no intention of letting a vulnerable person suffer under her roof. "Your Highness," Songjin clutched the milk carton, eyes glistening with fresh tears. "What's wrong now?" Qin Ge felt her head throb. This new hire cried at the slightest gesture of kindness. Could a single carton of milk move her to such grief? It made sense, given how starved and frail she appeared. Qin Ge cleared her throat gently. "If you work for me, I'll pay you regular wages and provide all daily meals. Remember, the system promised a full double serving of braised chicken rice as a reward. I won't treat my staff unfairly." She patted Songjin's shoulder reassuringly. "Rest assured, I'm not the kind of exploitative employer you might fear. You'll receive every cent you're owed on time." "That's not it," Songjin wiped away her tears. "My heart aches seeing how harsh your daily life has become." Qin Ge stared in complete confusion. Songjin glanced around the cramped, worn room in shock. "Your living quarters are so small and dilapidated, and you wear plain cotton garments only." Guilt weighed heavy on her chest. Even during their bitter exile, the princess had traveled in decorated sedan chairs and worn fine silk robes. Once, her royal chambers had shone with luxury and splendor. Now the princess lived alone in a weathered wooden cottage, without a single maid to tend to her needs. As her chief lady-in-waiting, Songjin had failed her utterly. Qin Ge could barely process her words. This new employee seemed burdened with an overwhelming urge to cater to and worry over her every need. She hadn't even considered her living space subpar, yet Songjin fretted on her behalf instantly. Chin-ge offered encouraging words to lift her spirits. As long as we work hard together, every hardship will fade and better days will come. She prepared to outline her wage offer, but Songjin dropped to her knees once more. I would lay down my life and endure any hardship for you without hesitation. You owe me no compensation whatsoever. That won't do at all. Chin-ge helped her stand a second time. This was a formal employment agreement. She provided work, Songjin provided labor, and fair pay was non-negotiable. Otherwise, the system would refuse to grant her the promised rewards. Chin-ge resolved to lay out clear workplace rules to guide her new employee. You must abide by these core staff regulations, or I'll have no choice but to terminate your employment. Songjin bowed her head respectfully. I will comply with all your orders. Chin-ge began listing the rules one by one. First and foremost, there are no royal or servant ranks within this property. You do not need to place me on an unapproachable pedestal. We are complete equals. She would never mimic her uncle's arrogant, condescending behavior toward others. Warmth bloomed in Songjin's heart. As you command. The fallen Qing dynasty belonged to the past. She and her fellow refugees would step into an equal new future here. Second rule, Qin-ji's tone turned serious. You may kneel only before heaven, earth, and yourself, never before another person. No more bowing or kneeling to me from this moment forward. Songjin had never heard such radical beliefs before, the concept shaking her to her core. After a long pause to absorb the idea, she nodded slowly. I understand, and I will obey. Chin-ge smiled in satisfaction. Third and most vital rule, you must follow all my instructions without hesitation. She inserted the milk carton straw and held it out to Songjin's lips. If I tell you to drink something, you drink it without protest. I'll add more rules as new situations arise later. She hadn't thought of all potential guidelines yet and would adjust the code as needed once problems emerged. Songjin subconsciously sucked at the milk carton. The sweet aroma of milk soothed her parched throat, and every inch of her skin rejoiced at the long-lost nourishment. She drained the entire carton in one go. It had been far too long since she'd tasted anything decent. Clutching the empty carton in her hands, Songjin was overcome with shame. Milk of such fine quality was a luxury even nobles could rarely afford. She'd lost the princess, yet the princess had still bestowed such a precious treat upon her. When she lifted her head, Chin-ge was gazing at her with a soft smile. Finished? There's more here. Chin-ge tore open another pack of milk and handed her several packs of French soft bread rolls as well. Just tear the packaging open and eat them. Songjin instinctively moved to decline. Chin-ge's expression turned firm. Are you ignoring your employer's words? Tears stung Songjin's eyes. She ripped open a roll and bit into it. The rich fragrance of refined wheat blended with egg and sugar, sweet, aromatic, and pillowy soft. It was a texture she'd never experienced before. Songjin's eyes widened slightly. It resembled steamed wheat buns, yet far more delicious. Though cold, it retained the tender softness of one fresh from the steamer. She hadn't shed a tear the day her kingdom fell, but reunited with her princess, her eyes kept glistening. The princess hadn't changed. She was still the compassionate, kind young princess of the Qing kingdom who cared deeply for her servants. Songjin only ate one roll before stopping. Chin-ge said, finish all of them. Songjin hesitated. May I save the rest to take back home? Chin-ge paused, realizing Songjin's family must be living in dire straits. It was only natural she'd want to bring fine food to her loved ones. But the system had its rules. Chin-ge explained her terms of employment to her. You'll work 6 hours a day, with a wage of 10 yuan per hour. She felt a twinge of embarrassment as she spoke. The hourly pay was rather low. Yet it was what the system mandated. Meals are included during work hours, but lodging is not. You may eat and use supplies here freely, yet nothing aside from your salary can be taken off the premises. This was another rule set by the system. It struck her as harsh, though she had no choice but to abide by it, unsure of the reasoning behind such restrictions. Still, meager as the wages were, they would at least keep Songjin from starving. Songjin understood Chin-ge's meaning. She had to finish the food here, as she could not carry any away. If that was the case, she would eat every last bit. Court etiquette was ingrained deep in Songjin's bones. She ate quickly yet gracefully, a pleasant sight to behold. Watching Songjin finish all the food bit by bit, a warm sense of fulfillment welled up in Chin-ge's heart. Feeding others was an innate human impulse. In an era where many struggled with high blood pressure and high cholesterol, seeing someone so gaunt filled Chin-ge with distress. The meat, eggs, and milk rewarded by the system the previous day would be perfect to help build up Song Jin's strength. After swallowing her final mouthful of bread, Song Jin leaned forward eagerly. "What tasks may I perform for you?" Chin-ge raised an eyebrow in surprise. Such diligence. Truly, anything provided by the system was of excellent quality. Chin-ge assigned her chores. "This morning, we'll tidy up the bedroom, living room, bathroom, and kitchen together. This afternoon, clear away the overgrown weeds outside the house. We'll just do a basic deep clean first. We won't finish everything in a single day." The moment Chin-ge finished speaking, Song Jin grabbed a rag and immediately set to scrubbing every surface. Her belly full and energy restored, she was eager to prove her worth before her princess. The princess had traveled alone to this strange new world, found a place to live with no one to care for her, and still shared such abundant food with a mere servant like herself. She was determined to lighten the princess's burdens to the best of her ability. Song Jin swept the floors spotless and polished every piece of furniture until it shone. She worked tirelessly, not pausing to take a single sip of water. Chin-ge stared in awe at her incredible work ethic. "Take a break," Chin-ge said, stepping forward to pull her aside. Song Jin lifted her eyes to meet Chin-ge's gaze, her look filled with a profound tenderness and pity Chin-ge could not decipher. "I am not tired." A strange tingle ran down Chin-ge's spine. "I may not be tired, but I am. Let's have lunch first." Song Jin waved her rag, ready to resume cleaning, only to be stopped by Chin-ge. "Are you disregarding your employer's instructions again?" Worried, Song Jin halted her movements at once. By mid-morning, Chin-ge's cottage was mostly cleaned. Chin-ge laid the new bed linens she'd brought over in the bedroom. Song Jin had polished every piece of furniture to a shine and mopped the wooden floor over and over. She'd also rearranged the layout of Chin-ge's bedroom, moving the bed from its spot against the wall to the side of the room and shifting the desk from the corner to the head of the bed. The rearrangement suddenly opened up a vast stretch of empty space. The layout was far more logical and pleasing to the eye. Sunlight and breezes would drift over the bed from then on. Chin-ge pushed open the window. Lush greenery stretched out as far as the eye could see outside, and cool wind swirled through the room. Though the morning's labor had left her weary, Chin-ge felt light and unburdened. This place was infinitely better than the cramped shared rental flat she'd occupied in the big city, where sunlight never reached and mildew lingered constantly. Chin-ge couldn't help but regret resigning so late. Glancing around the newly brightened room, Song Jin nodded faintly. The old cottage was furnished with solid, fine wooden pieces, worn with age yet fully functional. The only missing items were a folding screen and a vanity table. Song Jin silently vowed that one day, she would acquire both for her princess. The cottage had running water and electricity, plus a well out back that yielded crisp, sweet spring water. Chin-ge used tap water for washing, reserving the well water for drinking. She pulled a pre-packaged braised chicken rice meal out from her system storage space. "Time for lunch." Song Jin stared in amazement. How could the princess prepare such a hearty dish in mere moments? Could the princess have attained immortality, and this land be some divine realm? Yet so many astonishing things had happened that day, she would not have been shocked if the princess truly were an immortal now. Song Jin had already grasped that the world the princess resided in was vastly different from her original homeland. She drew in a deep breath, inhaling the rich, savory aroma of braised chicken. Chin-ge laid out pairs of chopsticks and bowls. "It's pre-made braised chicken. Don't hold it against me." It was still pre-packaged food from the system, after all. Song Jin hesitated to sit at the table. There was a clear divide between princess and servant, and now that the princess seemed blessed with divine power, the gap felt even wider. "Sit down," Chin-ge said, gently pressing her onto a chair. "Everyone is equal here." Chin-ge resolved to drill this truth firmly into Song Jin's mind. Gradually growing familiar with Chin-ge's preferences, Song Jin set aside her reservations and sat down. The two ate side by side. Chin-ge had ordered braised chicken takeout countless times in the city, yet she'd never tasted anything as delicious as the system's pre-made version. The rice was glossy and fragrant, the chicken tender and free of dryness. The dish came loaded with side ingredients: crispy fried pork bites, leafy greens, shiitake mushrooms, dried tofu sheets, and potatoes. The portion was generous, every ingredient soaked through with rich braised sauce. Chin-ge ate with great relish. Together, they finished the entire large serving of rice and chicken. Song Jin scraped every drop of savory sauce to mix with her rice, leaving nothing behind. You must have endured terrible hardships all these days, princess, Songjin murmured as she cleared away the bowls and chopsticks. The title princess sounded faintly ridiculous to Qin Ji's ears, yet she'd somehow grown oddly accustomed to hearing Songjin say it. Qin nodded. It hasn't been easy living all alone. She thought back to her 4 years working at her uncle's company, swamped by his manipulative demands, forced to work endless overtime shifts. Life had moved at a suffocating breakneck pace, leaving no room for simple joys. This quiet village was far more to her liking. Songjin offered Qin a soft smile. Now that I am here, you will never be alone again. All surviving subjects of the fallen Qin kingdom would stand as the princess's support. Qin fell silent for a moment. The words were moving, spoken with unshakable sincerity straight from Songjin's heart. It was only then that Qin truly noticed how young Songjin actually was. At barely over 30, she ought not to look so haggard and worn. Qin nodded back at her. We'll build a better life together. For 4 years, she'd accumulated valuable connections and resources at her uncle's firm. It would be a waste not to put them to use for herself. Qin was fully confident her country and would thrive. She clenched her fist, cheering herself on inwardly. I'm going to build my own thriving business empire. An empire? Songjin's eyes widened with agitation, leaning forward to ask urgently. What can I do to assist you? Her eager, genuine concern was completely unfeigned. Qin finally understood why employers grew partial to certain staff. The emotional support Songjin provided was utterly irresistible. She'd only made a casual remark, yet her employee cared far more deeply than she herself did. One step at a time. First, we'll finish tidying up the property, Qin said, gesturing toward the yard outside. We have countless tasks ahead of us. This old cottage needs repairs, the paths need paving, and the rice paddies and fish pond cannot sit empty and unused. These would all be unique selling points to set her apart from competitors. Songjin lowered her brows and nodded, a clear plan forming in her mind that calmed her restlessness. The princess needed laborers to aid her. The surviving Qing subjects still held value. Unaware of Songjin's inner thoughts, Qin spoke lightheartedly. When we expand and grow prosperous in the future, you'll hold an original share in the business, and I'll name you head steward of the farmstead. Songjin smiled faintly. I shall be content merely to stay by your side. Qin Ji's cheeks flushed, still unused to such unreserved, fervent devotion from Songjin. She quickly changed the subject. All right, we've finished eating. Back to work. Besides her own bedroom, more than a dozen guest rooms remained uncleaned. There was no rush, though. Half a year's worth of dust coated every surface, and it would take the two of them more than a day or two to scrub everything clean. Qin led Songjin outside to clear the weeds. Qin carried a shovel while Songjin held a sickle. Songjin insisted Qin rest and let her tackle all the labor alone, but Qin refused, insisting they share the work equally. Songjin sighed helplessly. Her princess was far too stubborn. Yet the Qing kingdom was gone, and the princess herself had declared there were no more princesses or servants, that all people stood equal. Songjin threw herself into the weeding with great vigor, until the sickle sliced open her knee, fresh blood seeping from the wound. You're bleeding. Stop working for now, Qin called her over. Let's get this cut bandaged. Songjin brushed it off. It's nothing serious. She had spent years as a servant, and after the kingdom's fall, endured backbreaking labor like farming, weaving, hauling water, and any menial chore to scrape by and survive. During years of famine, even royal descendants had to bend their backs in the fields for a single mouthful of food. Wounds like this always healed within 2 days. This counts as a work injury. I can't just ignore it, Qin said. She fetched Yunnan bio powder and adhesive bandages, cleaning and dressing the shallow cut simply. Thankfully, the wound was minor, only using a small amount of blood. Noticing Songjin's tattered clothing, Qin rummaged out an old set of garments left by her grandmother. It was a blue homespun cross-collar top paired with gray homespun loose trousers. They're a little old-fashioned, but very soft and comfortable to wear. Qin told Songjin to change into them. Songjin's ragged clothes were long past due for replacement, barely covering her calves. She felt a surge of embarrassment as she obediently changed into the new outfit. Songjin was extremely thin, so the clothes hung loosely on her frame, yet her entire bearing shifted completely from that morning. Qin told her to spin around for her to see, nodding in approval. It suits you well. You may keep it. I'll deduct its cost from your wages. These clothes had belonged to her grandmother. She was sure her grandmother would be glad to know they were being put to good use on someone in need. Aunt Chinga. Two children, one older and one younger, walked toward Chinga hand in hand. They were clutching two plastic bags brimming with fresh vegetables. Chinga looked on in surprise. Su-hai, Su-shing, what brings you two here? Su-hai and Su-shing were brother and sister, 9 and 7 years old respectively, grandchildren of Uncle Su, the man who'd driven Chinga back to the village on his tricycle the previous day. Grandpa sent us to come help you clean up. Who's she? Who's this lady? She's so thin, she looks like she hasn't had enough to eat in ages. 10-year-old Su-hai stared openly at Songjin, speaking his thoughts without restraint. He'd never laid eyes on anyone so gaunt. His younger sister Su-shing tugged at the hem of his shirt. Brother, that's rude of you. Chinga stroked Su-hai's hair, speaking up to defend Songjin with a smile. This is an employee I've hired to help with work. You need to be polite to her. Su-hai's face turned red. He bowed deeply to Songjin at once. I'm sorry, Auntie. Please forgive me. Songjin stared, stunned by the boy's robust health. Brother and sister both glowed with vitality, their skin sun-kissed warm brown, faint freckles dusting the boy's cheeks. Though they appeared to be ordinary village children, they looked far healthier than the noble youngsters from her homeland. There was an unbridgeable difference between the folk of this world and those she'd known. Recovering from her shock, Songjin quickly replied. No offense taken. Su-shing tilted her head and asked Chinga sweetly. Auntie, what chores would you like us to do? Su-shing was far more tactful than her brother, her earnest little expression utterly adorable and soft. She was also a top student at the village primary school. Chinga pinched the soft baby fat on her cheek. This afternoon, you'll help us clear all the weeds out front. Got it. Su-hai agreed at once, then tugged at the hem of Chin-ji's shirt, pleading playfully. Auntie, we shouldn't work for nothing. You came back from the big city, so you must have snacks with you. Can you share some with me and my sister? All right, stop pulling, you'll tear my shirt, Chinga said with a helpless laugh. What snacks do you two want? Su-hai refused to let go, grinning widely. Spicy wheat strips. Watching this exchange, a flicker of resentment stirred in Songjin's heart. A mere village child dared to grab and pester the princess, bold enough to demand treats outright. It was blatant disrespect, a complete disregard for proper hierarchy and station. She hadn't minded the boy calling her underfed, yet seeing him behave so familiarly and grab at Chinga stoked her anger. She was about to step forward to reprimand him, when a spicy wheat strip was suddenly pushed into her mouth. Songjin chewed it instinctively. Spicy, savory, and salty flavors burst across her tongue, the chewy strip carrying a subtle sweet aftertaste, coated in chili oil and sesame seeds that grew more fragrant with every bite. Songjin's eyes flew wide open. This bold, vivid flavor was incredible. Su-hai beamed proudly at her stunned expression. No one could resist the allure of spicy wheat strips. Tastes good, right? Songjin remained dazed for a long moment before nodding slowly. It's delicious. The anger churning in her chest dissipated instantly. The princess's world operated by rules entirely foreign to her own. This child addressed the princess as his aunt, after all. Chinga ruffled Su-hai's hair. Quit preening and get to work. If we finish clearing all the weeds by sunset, I'll give you 2 extra packs on your way home. Su-hai's eyes lit up with excitement. Just wait and see, Auntie. My sister and I work super fast. Transport links to Jushan village were inconvenient, there were no courier stations nearby, and traveling into town every single day was impractical. Spicy wheat strips held immense appeal for the village children. Motivated by the promise of snacks, the 2 kids threw themselves into pulling weeds with boundless energy. Unable to hold back her curiosity, Songjin asked Chinga, "This child behaves with such casual lack of deference toward you. Why do you not grow cross?" Chinga blinked in confusion. Where's the disrespect? He's only teasing playfully. 2 packs of spicy wheat strips for 2 hardworking little helpers. I'm thrilled for the extra hands. In the early stages of launching her business, every extra pair of hands counted, no matter how young. I understand people from your homeland hold very traditional, rigid views of status. But all people are born equal. Even children deserve to be treated as independent individuals. Chinga smiled gently. Besides, they're good kids. I'm practically their elder relative. I'd share treats with them even if they never asked. Songjin froze completely. She was beginning to grasp what the princess meant by equality for all. In this world, no rigid social hierarchy divided people by birth or station. I see, princess, she said softly. From this day forward, she would strive to learn and accept this new way of thinking. With Su Hai and Su Xing lending a hand, Qin Ge and Song Jin finished the yard work far faster. By late afternoon, nearly all the overgrown weeds in front of the cottage had been cleared away. Qin Ge also dug out a wooden handcart from the storage shed. The 2 adults and 2 children gathered smooth river pebbles, hauling them back to pave the ground in front of the house. Qin Ge pitched in alongside Su Hai and Su Xing, laughing and joking with them as they worked, while Song Jin stood quietly watching, pouring all her energy into labor without further comment. Once the pebbles were laid, the yard grew far cleaner, tidier, and more attractive. Su Hai grabbed Su Xing's hand and hopped back and forth across the stone path. "I'm stamping down a solid stone walkway for you, Auntie. No more muddy feet even when it rains." Sweat glistened on the children's faces as they hopped merrily across the yard like little rabbits. "Planning to run in and out of this ramshackle hovel?" A middle-aged man with a protruding belly strolled into view, hands clasped behind his back. He swept his small eyes over the old cottage before letting out a scornful snort. A fine city girl, choosing to come wallow in mud alongside village peasants. "Qin Ge, this is the height of your ambition, is it?" As he spoke, he kicked violently at the newly laid pebble path. "This place doesn't even have proper roads. I'll eat my hat if you manage to attract a single paying guest." Su Hai's temper flared. Standing barely 4.5 feet tall, he puffed out his chest and confronted the man. "Uncle Fengsheng, what do you mean by that? Auntie came back to the village to start a business, not to wallow with peasants. Our teacher said Jushan village has beautiful mountains and clear rivers. Loads of guests will come visit. Mind your tongue, you brat." Su Fengsheng grew irritated at the boy's retort and raised his palm to strike Su Hai, yet the child did not flinch, staring unblinkingly back at him. Qin Ge stepped forward at once, shielding Su Hai behind her body. She recognized Su Fengsheng well. He was an external contractor employed by her uncle's company, tasked with purchasing agricultural goods from all the village households. As the sole buyer for local farm produce, villagers had no choice but to tolerate his unfair low prices, treating him with excessive deference as a result. Over time, Su Fengsheng wielded more influence in the village than even village chief Su. Still, Qin Ge wondered what business brought him here uninvited. She had no farm goods for him to purchase. Qin Ge cut straight to his motive. "You're here as my uncle's spy, sent to check whether my adventure will amount to anything, aren't you?" Su Fengsheng's face stiffened, caught completely off guard that Qin Ge had guessed his errand. The young girl was far sharper-witted than he'd expected. "So what if I am? I work for Xingshi Company. It's only right I look out for my employer's interests. Do you truly think this tiny cottage imposes any threat to Xingshi? Even at its absolute best, you'll never poach enough customers to matter." Su Fengsheng put on a falsely concerned tone. "You'd be better off marrying a man, using the inheritance your grandmother left as your dowry. You wouldn't be settling for a bad match at all." Crash! Before Qin Ge could respond, Song Jin lifted a wooden basin full of dirty washing water and hurled its entire contents straight over Su Fengsheng as he rambled on with his arrogant remarks. Su Fengsheng was doused head to toe with filthy water by Song Jin. Murky gray liquid dripped off Su Fengsheng's chin, carrying a rank, fermented stench. "Wow!" Su Hai and Su Xing's eyes lit up as they looked at Song Jin, full of admiration. "You!" Su Fengsheng pointed at Song Jin, his lips trembling uncontrollably. "How dare you splash water on me?" "My apologies," Song Jin said flatly. "I didn't notice anyone standing outside." Su Fengsheng flew into a rage. "I'm standing right here in plain sight and you claim you didn't see me? You did that on purpose. Qin Ge, what kind of staff have you hired? Has she no basic decency at all?" Qin Ge leaned against the doorframe and called out, "Hey, you stood in the way blocking the path all by yourself. Getting splashed with dirty water is no more than you deserve. Decency is only for decent people. Duplicate keys cost 5 yuan each. Do you even qualify for one, let alone several? Get out of here while you still can, or I'll tell her to soak you a second time." Su Fengsheng's face burned bright red with fury, yet he knew he could not gain the upper hand against Qin Ge. Wiping the grime from his face, he shot a threatening glare at Song Jin. "I won't forget this humiliation today. Don't you dare step 1 foot outside Jushan village. Once you leave the village, I'll make you regret it." Qin Ge let out a cold laugh. "Who do you think you're threatening? You trespassed onto private property, verbally assaulted me, and caused severe emotional distress. Don't test whether I'll call the police. He's also stealing confidential company information." Su Xing added. The weight of such serious accusations left Su Fengxing stunned. He had heard Qin Gu was fearless. She had even confronted her uncle Qin Xiang openly and threatened to press charges against him. It seemed the rumors were true. She really might summon the police. "Don't try to scare me. I'm not afraid," Su Fengxing bluffed, yet he steadily stepped backward until he vanished without a trace. "Worthless man," Qin Gu muttered, her insult extending to Qin Xiang as well. They shared blood ties, yet the moment she handed in her resignation, her uncle had sent men to spy on her. What a beloved elder he truly was. Still, Su Fengxing's visit had served as a reminder for Qin Gu. She needed to install surveillance cameras and finish all permits and paperwork required for the opening. If everything was fully compliant and legal, troublemakers would have no grounds to pick fights with her. Besides, she had no intention of poaching the low-end clientele of Xingshi Company. Her homestay only had a limited number of rooms. Even if she hosted 100 guests daily, her profits could never compare to Xingshi's. Qin Gu had set her sights on wealthy high-end customers. She had to finish constructing and opening the homestay within 2 months. The sooner it opened, the sooner she could rest easy. System notification: host has driven away an intruder. Reward: 500 cash. The system's voice suddenly echoed in her mind. Could defeating troublemakers earn her rewards? Qin Ji's heart leaped with joy. The sum was modest, but something was better than nothing. She would seize every chance to collect such small rewards. Good riddance to that useless Su Fengxing. Su Hai clapped his hands in delight. Both Su Hai and Su Xing detested Su Fengxing deeply. When purchasing local farm goods, he always drove down prices ruthlessly and nitpicked endlessly. Once, he falsely claimed the dandelions Su Xing gathered were substandard. He cut her payment in half and confiscated a third of her harvest for free. Those flowers had taken the young girl 3 or 4 full days to dig and wash one by one. The memory made Su Hai grind his teeth in anger. Qin Gu beckoned Su Hai to lean closer and whispered, "Go quietly tell the villagers that Su Fengxing often clashes with his company's purchasing staff over business disputes." Su Xing tilted her head, curious. "Aunt Qin, what did you say to brother? I want to hear too." Songjin's cheeks flushed, and she pulled Su Xing aside. This sort of talk isn't suitable for young girls to listen to. Qin Gu thought to herself that the former palace lady had grown quite mischievous lately. Su Xing was an obedient child, so she dropped the matter without pressing further. After hearing the message, Su Hai slapped his chest confidently. "Leave it to me. This will humiliate Uncle Fengxing thoroughly." Qin Gu warned, "Don't mention I told you this." "Of course not," Su Hai promised. Meanwhile, Su Xing gazed at Songjin with pure admiration. "Aunt Song, you're amazing. You chased that bad man right off our land." Even Qin Gu had not expected Songjin to be so bold and quick-witted. Looks truly could be deceiving. Though she appeared frail enough to be blown over by a breeze, she was a remarkably capable woman underneath. Songjin humbly replied, it was nothing of consequence. Once, she had overseen the entire imperial palace and dealt with countless unruly troublemakers. A mere lackey like Su Fengxing was trivial by comparison. "All right, everyone, take a break. You've all worked hard today," Qin Gu called them all inside. She shared snacks and milk with them. Hanging back a little, Qin Gu asked Songjin, "Weren't you scared when you splashed water on him?" Songjin shook her head. "I felt no fear. Princess, you need not worry either. I will always protect you." Qin Gu froze for a moment, then mumbled quietly to herself, "Who exactly needs protecting around here? Wow, it's spotlessly clean." Su Xing and Su Hai gasped the second they stepped into the main hall. The old house seemed to glow. Years of dust had been scrubbed off the aged wooden beams, revealing their warm natural amber grain. The dark brown wooden floors carried a simple, elegant charm. Even the square antique table radiated a quiet beauty forged by time. The children could not articulate why the space felt wonderful. It left them feeling comfortable. Though the building remained old, its atmosphere had transformed completely. Qin Gu smiled warmly. Aunt Song tidied everything up. Beyond deep cleaning, Songjin had rearranged the layout to bring out a timeless antique charm. Su Hai wandered around the room with curiosity. Su Xing blinked her eyes, fascinated. "Aunt Song, how did you figure out such a clever way to arrange the tables and chairs?" Songjin's face turned pink under the children's constant praise. "I followed the principles of spatial feng shui." In her former role managing palace affairs, she had studied all manner of knowledge. Rearranging rooms to maximize space, beauty and functionality was merely a basic skill for her. You've all put in a long day's labor. In addition to the spicy strips, I'll give you meat floss buns. Chinga handed out the snacks as pledged, then reminded them gently. Spicy strips are processed snacks. Eating too many isn't good for your health, so enjoy them moderately. We understand. Su Hai and Su Xing replied in unison. Songjin was utterly stunned by Qin Ji's words. She could still recall the taste of spicy strips, rich, aromatic oil paired with chewy wheat noodles. In her eyes, such a fine treat made from refined flour and fragrant oil could never be labeled unhealthy junk food. Here's your day's wages, Qin handed Songjin 60 yuan. Songjin did not take the money and explained politely, the currency we use in my homeland is different from this. She had used silver notes in the palace, and clearly, the paper money Qinga held no value in her world. Qinga stared at Songjin, lost in thought. If she did not recognize renminbi, could it mean her people still relied on barter? That seemed shockingly primitive. Nodding with a solemn expression, Qinga said, I know how to compensate you now. She fetched 10 jin of rice and 10 jin of flour, packing them into sacks. The rice and grain came from system rewards. Rice cost 3 yuan per jin, flour 2.5 yuan per jin. 10 jin of rice and 10 jin of flour totaled 55 yuan. Since the system prohibited free gifts, Qinga assigned a 5 yuan tag to the outfit, bringing the total exactly to 60 yuan. Songjin had labored well over 6 hours, yet only received payment for 6 hours of work. Qinga could not help but grumble at how strict the system's rules were. System notification. Once upgraded, the host may extend employee working hours and unlock additional staff benefits. Qinga asked, how can I upgrade the system? System notification. Recruit more employees and complete assigned tasks to advance the system level. Qinga sighed. She wanted to finish building the homestay quickly, yet she lacked both money and manpower. Pushing the thought aside, she handed over payment. Songjin hefted the heavy sacks of grain, and tears nearly welled up in her eyes. Princess, may I return to your side tomorrow? Qinga looked at her, confused. Just come back tomorrow, of course. The system had not placed any restrictions on rehiring Songjin. Songjin bowed low before Qinga. You have saved my life twice, princess. I shall never forget this boundless kindness for as long as I live. Qinga shuddered, covered in goosebumps from the overly formal speech. Songjin was perfect, save for her archaic, flowery court language. Qinga waved her off. Head home now. The roads will be dangerous once full night falls. Songjin left, glancing back every few steps. Once she was gone, Qinga walked into the kitchen to prepare instant noodles for herself. She would crack an egg, add a ham sausage, and toss in some lettuce Su Hai and Su Xing had brought over from Uncle Su's farm. A deluxe feast fit for ordinary mortals. She flipped on the light, and the kitchen that had once been cluttered stood spotless. Qinga had planned to tackle the kitchen cleaning the next day, yet someone had finished it already. There could be no one but Songjin. Qinga let out a soft sigh. Songjin truly saw her as her royal princess, devoted wholeheartedly. Since Songjin treated her with such sincere loyalty, Qinga resolved to push forward and open the homestay as soon as possible, so she could repay all those who stood by her. Meanwhile, dusk had fully settled by the time Songjin reached her dwelling deep in the hills. Jinyang, where have you been the entire day? I feared the worst for you. A tall, lean man hurried over to her with 3 small children aged 4 to 5 clinging to his sides. The man possessed sharp, handsome brows and upright, noble features, yet like Songjin, he was emaciated. His cheekbones protruded sharply beneath thin skin that clung tightly to his bones, revealing the outlines of his muscles. Mother, we were so scared without you. The eldest boy threw his arms around Songjin's legs, eyes glistening with tears. Father and I thought you'd done something desperate. The tall man added, Jinyang, tomorrow I'll head into the mountains to hunt. I will surely catch game to feed us. The youngest girl whimpered softly, Mother, sell me away. Then our family will have food to eat. Songjin herded her family inside the cottage, shutting the door. Daizhong, I haven't done anything reckless. I've found the princess. Daizhong reached out instinctively to press his palm to Songjin's forehead, checking for fever. You show no sign of being ill. Songjin brushed his hand away and carefully set the 2 cloth sacks on the wooden table. Look at what I've brought back. Found the princess? Daizhong's first reaction was disbelief. As commander of the palace guard, he had led the remaining royal troops to resist the invading army the day the princess vanished. He knew all too well the overwhelming strength of the enemy. If the princess had been captured, survival would have been impossible. Had Jinyang's longing for her royal mistress driven her to lose her senses? But their youngest daughter Nyenyang cried out in shock. "Father, look. Pure white rice and fine wheat flour. We can have congee tonight." The two cloth sacks held gleaming white rice grains, clean and bright enough to dazzle the eye. Daizhong plucked a single grain between his fingers, utterly stunned. The quality was superior polished new grain, a luxury even wealthy families could rarely afford. Where had Jinyang obtained such rice? He pinched a handful of flour next, fine, powdery, unadulterated with coarse wheat husks, carrying a natural grain fragrance. No mill within miles of Taosan village could produce flour of such exceptional quality. "Where did you get this grain? And this clothing you wear?" The fabric of Songjin's new outfit was far too fine, stitched with delicate thread only noble households could afford to weave. "Did you truly encounter the princess?" Daizhong pressed. Songjin recounted every event from her day with Qingge in full detail. Daizhong drew a sharp breath. "The princess has become a divine being." Songjin's voice rang firm. "Whether she is a deity or not, I will follow her faithfully for all time." Once they finished discussing their important news, the three children stared at them with hungry eyes. Songjin smiled gently. "I'll cook congee for us all." The white rice congee was quickly simmered, every grain fully bloomed and stewed into a thick, creamy, sweet broth. Daizhong and the three children ate ravenously, licking their rough ceramic bowls until they shone clean. Songjin watched them eat, her gaze drifting far away. She could not bring back milk and bread with her. Their faces gaunt and dry, their limbs thin while their bellies swelled from hunger. The whole world felt like a surreal dream to Songjin. Daizhong noticed her distant stare and set down his bowl. "Why aren't you eating?" Songjin replied, "I ate my fill at the princess's manor, bread, milk, and meat, more than enough to satisfy me." "Even so, you must eat some," Daizhong insisted, pressing congee into her hands. Songjin only took a few small spoonfuls, passing the rest to her children. The milk and bread she had tasted that day had nourished her dried, worn body. Yet she could not bring any of those delicacies home to her family. It had been ages since the whole household had eaten a full meal, and the children soon grew drowsy. The youngest child Nyenyang rubbed her eyes and spoke in a childish murmur, "I wish we could drink white rice congee every single day for the rest of our lives." A sharp pain stabbed Songjin's heart. These three children had been born after the royal refugees fled to Taosan village and had never known a single day of comfort beside her. Even simple polished rice and fine flour were an unattainable luxury to them. Daizhong glanced at the two sacks of grain, his relaxed brows slowly furrowing once more. "This 20 gene of grain will ease our hardships for a while, but what of the other refugees?" 7 years had passed since the remnants of the Qing kingdom settled in Taosan village. Droughts had struck over those years, yet this year's dry spell was the worst yet. Many had already starved to death. The survivors left were only those with sturdy bodies and relentless perseverance. Otherwise, they would have perished alongside their fallen royal house long ago. Daizhong turned to Songjin. "What do you think we ought to do?" Though he was commander of the palace guard, he had never been one to make decisions, trained all his life only to obey orders. As the palace mistress, Songjin possessed sharp wit and steady judgment. And everyone trusted her above all others in times of crisis. Faced with such dire straits, he naturally turned to her for guidance. Songjin said, "We are all survivors of the Qing kingdom. I cannot stand by and watch our kin starve to death. Now that I have found the princess and there exists a path to her blessed domain, we ought to inform everyone." She could not bring herself to turn a blind eye to their suffering. Daizhong nodded and immediately stepped outside. "I will gather all the refugees at once." Moments later, every surviving Qing refugee assembled before the small shrine dedicated to their lost princess. Pale moonlight spilled over the ground, foretelling another scorching sun at dawn. No rain had fallen in half a year, leaving every face gaunt and hollow, etched with a dull numbness. Songjin swept her gaze over the crowd. Among them were once master embroiderers of the imperial court, royal banquet head chefs, carpenters with unmatched craft, hereditary royal physicians, and battle-hardened generals of peerless martial skill. Yet trapped by drought, their talents could not exchange for grain. Clad in tattered rags, they had long lost all trace of nobility, worn down by endless hardship. "Songjin, you sent Daizhong to summon us all. What is this about?" Songjin spoke slowly. "I know that ever since we lost our princess, hope has faded from your hearts. And you have wandered endlessly through chaos amid this brutal drought. Worse still, a new dynasty is soon to be established, and we displaced survivors of the Qing kingdom will almost certainly be their first target to eliminate. As soon as her words faded, an aged voice cut through. So, what if that is true? A wretched life is better than none. The princess is long dead. Do you intend to drag every last one of us to our graves alongside her? The speaker was Chao Hengji, chief astronomer of the Imperial Observatory. He let out a cold huff. The dead cannot return to life. Those of us who remain must look forward. I will never agree to any plan of collective sacrifice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many feared Songjin planned to urge them all to die for their fallen kingdom. In a time where starvation loomed every day, dying for their realm might seem a quiet escape. Yet no human being welcomed death. Even gnawing bark, digging wild herbs, or eating bitter clay was preferable to surrendering their lives. The Qing kingdom is gone, someone cried out. Several sank to their knees weeping, while others no longer had the strength to shed tears. Seeing their terrible misunderstanding, Songjin set the 2 sacks of grain heavily on the wooden altar. The princess still lives, and she has ascended to divine status. This grain is a gift. I have no intention of demanding that anyone lay down their lives for our old kingdom. The sacks of gleaming rice and flour slammed against the wood, drawing every eye to their contents. Chao Hengji swallowed hard, unable to believe his eyes. Is the princess truly alive? Songjin nodded, recounting every detail of her day working at Qin Ji's mountain homestay. What are these spicy strips you speak of? They sound delicious, one refugee sighed longingly, imagining the milk, spicy snacks, bread and braised chicken Songjin had tasted. Can we earn sacks of grain like these by working for the princess? Another asked, eager to learn about her wages. Others burst into tears, overcome with joy that their royal mistress still lived. I refuse to believe it, Chao Hengji muttered to himself. I observe the stars each night, and the imperial constellation has dimmed greatly. A clear omen that the royal line has fallen. Songjin gestured to the grain on the altar and spoke loudly for all to hear. Step forward and examine this grain the princess gifted me. No ordinary mortal could possess such fine provisions. Look also at the clothing I wear. Only a divine being could command such rare, luxurious goods. The villagers crowded forward to inspect the sacks of grain, stunned speechless by the unparalleled quality of the rice and flour. One skilled embroiderer dared to touch the fabric of Songjin's dress, gasping in wonder. The weave density of this cloth is far beyond the skill of any common seamstress. Only Chao Hengji remained unconvinced. You have all lost your wits. The princess perished long ago. There is no way she could still walk among us. These rice, flour and cloth are nothing but empty tricks to fool people. He stumbled away from the princess shrine, his back rigid with stubbornness. Songjin sighed. Once, Chao Hengji had clung fiercely to the hope of restoring their fallen kingdom. It was not disbelief that gnawed at him, but fear of crushing disappointment if he dared to hope again. Chao Hengji must think she had lost her wits, obsessed with the princess to the point of madness. Yet Songjin knew full well her mind was sound. The princess was still alive. Only by following the princess could they survive the catastrophic famine. Pulling herself together, Songjin set about distributing the rice and flour. The village well still yielded clean water, so water was not an urgent shortage. Grain was what they lacked desperately. The rations handed out were meager. Each person got 1 handful of rice or flour, allocated by household size. Still, as the villagers clutched their small portions, numb hearts stirred, and tears streamed down their faces. This handful of grain meant they could hold on for another day. If the princess lived, they would live too. After collecting their rations, everyone knelt and kowtowed voluntarily before the portrait of the princess. Songjin told one of her companions to take a handful of rice to Chao Hengji. The princess had taught them all people were equal. Trivial grudges meant nothing in the face of survival. Songjin was certain he would one day understand the princess's kindness. Lady Song, you've given away all the grain. What will you eat from now on? Songjin smiled faintly, a flicker of the authority she once held at court crossing her features. I will serve the princess again tomorrow and receive another reward. I've gathered everyone here today for 2 reasons. First, to tell you the princess still lives and hand out life-saving grain. Second, I need to select one person to stay by my side and attend to the princess. Her words hit the crowd like water poured into sizzling oil, sparking an immediate uproar. Only one person, Songjin clarified. But how will we meet the princess? Someone asked in confusion. None dared fully trust the princess had survived, even as they refused to accept her death. What if they never got to lay eyes on her? Songjin said, I have received a divine revelation. Pray sincerely before her portrait, and you too shall receive guidance just as I did. There is only one requirement: unwavering loyalty to the princess. A brief hush fell over the crowd, then the clamor erupted once more. Choose me. If I may catch just one glimpse of her to know she lives, I shall die content. I will stand guard and protect the princess. The princess cannot live alone with no one to tend to her. I will cook all her meals. I will wash her clothes for her. Pick me. I will do anything and everything for the princess. Voices crashed together like boiling porridge trapped inside a pressure cooker. After a long wait, Songjin singled out a teenage girl of 17 or 18 named Rongji. The princess had mentioned earlier that the grounds needed thorough cleaning, so Songjin picked Rongji to work as the princess's housekeeper. Those left unselected stared at Rongji with red eyes, consumed by envy. Rongji's face burned bright with excitement, unable to believe she would see the princess the next day. She dropped to her knees at once. Thank you for your great kindness, Lady Song. She knocked her head hard against the ground before the portrait. Thank you for your mercy, princess. Songjin frowned. She would need to train Rongji thoroughly before they headed to the princess's mountain villa. The princess detested constant kneeling and bowing. She calmed the disappointed villagers. The villa still needs many hands. This task simply takes priority for now. Wait patiently, and you will all get work there eventually. Any more life-saving grain we gather will be shared evenly among everyone. Though many felt dejected, few carried heavy resentment. Simply learning the princess lived and receiving a handful of rice had already filled them with gratitude. As head lady in waiting, Songjin could easily have hoarded all the grain without anyone knowing. Her willingness to share spoke volumes of her generous heart. That's true. The princess has lost her memory after all. I look fierce enough to frighten her half to death. Just wait a while longer, my chance will come. Murmurs of quiet consolation rippled through the crowd. Songjin dismissed the villagers, keeping only Rongji behind. She gave the girl a brief orientation, emphasizing above all the princess's belief that all people stood equal. All people equal? The thought bordered on sacrilege. Rongji's heart hammered wildly. Could a lowly maid ever stand on equal footing with royalty? Songjin made her kneel before the portrait to pray. Thrilled yet nervous, Rongji squeezed her eyes shut. Princess, if you still walk this earth, I wish you health, peace, carefree days, and boundless freedom. Old country house Chingo was admiring the new refrigerator awarded by her system. At 225 liters, it was more than enough for her to use alone. Tomorrow she would head into town to buy cold drinks and ice cream, enough to keep cool all summer long. Her room on the ground floor was the largest, containing a bedroom and a main hall. Chingo planned to turn the main hall into a front desk for guest check-ins, reserving the bedroom for herself. She moved the system's refrigerator into the spacious kitchen, which had ample room for large furniture without cluttering the layout. New system quest triggered. Quest objective: hire one employee via the system. Daily wages, available time limit, 24 hours reward, 500 yuan cash, one smart electric rice cooker. Another new quest. Chingu accepted it instantly, overjoyed. System hired staff worked diligently and came with low pay. She could not be happier with them. An extra pair of hands would speed up renovations and let her open the homestay sooner. Early the next dawn, Chingu trekked back up the mountain. The sky had barely lightened, and she dragged herself forward half asleep. The system must have lost its mind, sending her out at this hour to pick someone up. Pick someone up? More like picking up ghosts. Ghosts? At the sight of two pale, robed women emerging through the mist, Chingu spun and fled. Princess! Songjin called out urgently. It's me, Songjin. Recognizing the familiar voice, Chingu cautiously turned to look at the pair. It was no wonder she'd mistaken them for spirits. Their ancient tattered robes and waist-length black hair looked utterly unlike modern townsfolk. Thin as dried skeletons, they blurred through the haze like phantoms. You're the new hire? Chingu asked Rongji. Rongji kept her head lowered, and the question prompted her to drop to her knees instinctively. Your servant Rongji greets the princess. Before her knees touched the dirt, Songjin hauled her upright to stop the bow. She whispered a sharp reminder beside Rongji's ear, do not refer to yourself as a servant. Rongji realized she had violated the princess's taboo, terror flooding her until tears welled in her eyes. Princess, she had truly laid eyes on the princess, and excitement made her forget Songjin's instructions entirely. Qin Ji's head throbbed. Dealing with Song Jin alone had been enough. Now another person obsessed with ancient customs had arrived. Still, Song Jin's presence had hardened her nerves. She could bear being addressed as princess without embarrassment now. This young girl, however, was skittish as a grain of rice. How would she manage work? Chin-gu led them back to the old house, gesturing toward the sack of rice in the kitchen with an awkward scratch of her nose. Does either of you know how to cook congee? She had risen far too early to eat breakfast yet, and the smart rice cooker from the system reward had not arrived, leaving only the traditional stove. I can, sure. Rongji raised her hand timidly. Cook enough for all three of us. After we eat, we'll head into town to run errands and wander the temple fair. Chin-gu noted how gaunt both women were, certain they had not eaten that morning either. Use plenty of rice, don't skimp, she stressed. I obey. Rongji bowed automatically, only to be pulled back by Songjin once more. Left alone to cook in the kitchen, Rongji spoke in a low murmur. Lady Song, the princess feels different somehow. Her face is unchanged, yet the way she speaks is entirely foreign. Songjin smiled softly. The princess has only changed her attire. Spend more time with her, and you will witness her boundless kindness. Rongji nodded. She was merely a lowly maid who had escaped the capital's fall only by virtue of her skill at styling noble ladies' hair. Without that talent, she would have perished the day their kingdom fell. She knew she lacked Songjin's courage and strategy. Hairdressing was her only marketable skill. Standing before the princess, anxiety churned in her chest. What if the princess decided she was useless and sent her away? Soon, thick bowls of rice congee were set on the table, one for each person. Chin-gu nodded in satisfaction at the hearty portions. She tore open a pack of dried kelp and added a handful to every bowl. Make do with this simple meal. We'll get more tasty food once we reach town. The temple fair promised endless snacks and entertainment. Rongji clutched her bowl, swallowing hard against her hunger. Fragrant, creamy white congee paired with rare seafood, food meant for nobility, laid before a humble maid like her. She sat at the same table as the princess and head lady-in-waiting, stammering nervously. See, can I truly eat this? Chin-gu glanced at Songjin in confusion. Do you dislike the food? Had she misjudged things? Was Rongji's extreme thinness not from starvation, but an eating disorder? Songjin realized her training had been incomplete. She nudged Rongji's ankle under the table. Eat. Rongji bit her lip, holding back burning tears as she lifted the bowl and ate. The rich rice aroma melted on her tongue, sweet and soft. She wept as she chewed. It had been 5 or 6 years since she had tasted such fine congee. The bowl itself was smooth white porcelain, and the dark green sea vegetable mixed in brined, savory and slightly spicy, perfect with rice. Her elders had told her coastal delicacies were rare treasures most people never laid eyes on. She had intended to sip slowly and savor every bite, but crippling hunger forced her to gulp down the congee in great mouthfuls. Lady Song had spoken the truth. This place was a paradise, and the princess a divine being. Chin-gu stared at the girl's ravenous eating, surprised then smiled warmly. We'll find far more delicious food once we reach town. After finishing her bowl, Rongji's cheeks flushed bright red with embarrassment. Princess, we have not yet worked, yet we've eaten such fine food. Chin-gu waved off her worries. It's an employee benefit. No complaints allowed. To her, it was merely 2 bowls of plain congee. The world held countless far better dishes. Chin-gu could not fathom that, amid endless famine, 2 bowls of thick white congee could buy a young girl's lifelong loyalty. As for the other delicacies she took for granted, the 2 women had never even seen them. Head into town? Should we not get to work first? Rongji asked cautiously. Moreover, this divine land likely held strict taboos against wandering outside without permission. Would heavenly powers punish them for leaving? Chin-gu said, accompanying me shopping counts as part of your work duties. She could not bear to work them from dawn till dusk while only paying wages for 6 hours each day. Would you rather stay behind? Chin-gu turned to Songjin. I worry you might cross paths with Su Foxing. I will come with you. I fear nothing, Songjin insisted firmly. She understood the princess's modern world operated by rules vastly different from her old realm. If she wished to aid the princess, she must learn and observe everything, never hiding away from a minor foe out of fear. Chin-gu grinned. Then let's set off. She borrowed a 3-wheeled cart from the village chief to carry Songjin and Rongji into town. The 2 women clung tightly to the handrails, marveling. No horses or oxen pulled the cart, yet it moved swiftly, faster than any carriage they had ridden. The ride jostled their hips, and there were no walls to shield them, their faces exposed openly to the world. Romji blushed shyly yet could not stop staring. Women in this modern world were nothing like those from her old kingdom. They walked freely in public, no longer swathed head to toe in robes. Their plain clothing looked vivid and beautiful all the same. Seated in the open rear cart, they stared wide-eyed as they traveled farther from the village. Songjin had once thought she had seen all the wonders of the world, yet here every common person owned horseless carriages. Three-wheeled carts, two-wheeled bikes, four-wheeled metal vehicles shaped like tiny houses, shielded from wind and rain and racing along the roads. She had thought the princess's three-wheeler extraordinary, yet far grander vehicles existed. Spotting a white sedan, Songjin leaned forward to ask Chin-go, "When will you own one of these metal houses, princess?" "Metal house?" Chin-go laughed. "That's a car. It costs roughly 100,000 yuan." She patted the three-wheeled cart beneath her. "This Huaihai cart from the village chief only cost 6,000. Songjin's mind raced with calculations. She earned 60 yuan per day working for the princess. If she saved every penny without spending a cent for 100 days, she could afford this cart. 100 full days of labor would barely cover 4 wheels of a car. "It is terribly expensive," Chin-go cleared her throat. "Once the homestay opens, we will be able to afford anything we want." "Will running a homestay bring in enough money?" "Absolutely," Chin-go confirmed. "I have 18 guest rooms planned. If each room rents for 2,000 yuan per night, revenue will hit 36,000. Chin-go had mapped out her business plan thoroughly, designing a composite rural retreat. The mountain behind the house boasted lush woods, stunning scenery, fruit trees, wild vegetables, mushrooms, and natural hot springs atop the peak, all unique selling points for guests. She planned to build a forest oxygen bar, self-picking orchard, and fishing pond as core attractions. Beyond the mountain, the pond before the old house, surrounding vegetable plots, rice paddies, and centuries-old architecture drew city dwellers seeking untouched countryside scenery. 2,000 yuan per night was merely the base price. Renovated luxury rooms would command far higher rates. Tourists would come for the views and hands-on rural experiences, and Chin-go thought the price a bargain. During her time working for Uncle Chin, luxury hotels charged 3,000 yuan per night without including meals. With elegant renovations, complete supporting services, and one-of-a-kind natural surroundings, she was confident the homestay would thrive. Their location was ideal, a quiet haven nestled between bustling cities, and newly paved roads guaranteed a steady stream of visitors. The only obstacles were insufficient funds and staff. The upscale hotels she had worked in featured brand-name furniture and soft furnishings, all costly to furnish her empty 3-story old house. "If only we had more money," Chin-go sighed. Romji plucked up the courage to ask, "What can we do if we lack money?" Chin-go replied, "Take out loans or seek investment funding." Still, she hoped to avoid both options. The old house had been left to her by her grandmother, and she refused to risk losing it to debt. Romji failed to grasp the concepts, but Songjin understood perfectly. Borrowing money or giving partial ownership to investors in exchange for capital. After a moment of thought, Songjin spoke resolutely. "Princess, if we handle all the renovations ourselves, would money no longer trouble us? Just the 3 of us, renovating everything alone?" Chin-go chuckled. "You underestimate the workload. I aim to open within 2 months. Yet 3 people would take 2 full years to finish all tasks. Do you know how to restore antique wooden furniture? Can you find a chef skilled at cooking on traditional earthen stoves with exclusive secret recipes? Are you aware high-quality mulberry silk bedding is required for every guest room? Even with all the materials on hand, we lack enough labor." "We can find labor," Songjin stated firmly. "Tomorrow, I shall bring a skilled carpenter to serve you." His name was Huang Jiangtao, once the most masterful craftsman in the royal palace. He mastered all woodworking arts, mortise and tenon joinery. He practiced lacquer carving, mother-of-pearl inlay, and fine-line engraving without flaw. Songjin said, restoring aged wooden furniture would be well within his expertise. "Perfect." Chin-go beamed. "From now on, you shall be my HR supervisor." The instant the words left her mouth, the system alert chimed. New system quest available to accept. Quest objective: hire 1 employee via the system. Daily wages, available time limit, 24 hours. Reward: 500 yuan cash, 1 pack of lotus seeds, 1 washing machine. Accept quest? Chin-go froze. She had only joked about naming Songjin HR supervisor, yet the system immediately issued a new task. Who exactly was Songjin, and where had she come from? Could this woman truly be her destined right-hand aide? It must be fate. Chin-go pulled the three-wheeled cart to a stop, turning to Songjin and Shi Rongji with a solemn expression. I will no longer hire you two on daily wages. Would you agree to monthly contracts instead? Songjin and Rongji nodded rapidly, like chicks pecking grain. They would gladly serve her for a lifetime. We are willing to devote ourselves to you, princess. A new interface popped up on the system screen at once. Employee details: Songjin, cleaner HR supervisor, daily wage, 60 yuan. Shi Rongji, cleaner, daily wage, 60 yuan. Congratulations on unlocking the employee management page. All system recruited staff information can be viewed here. Tip: completing more quests raises chances of unlocking improved employee benefits, including extended working hours, higher daily pay, holiday perks, and complimentary gifts. First-time unlock reward: mountain rear comfort rating increased by 100. Chin-ji's heart soared with delight. She had received an avalanche of rewards all at once. The constant stream of system alerts sounded sweeter than any music to her ears. She could not wait to return and see how the mountain landscape had transformed. Her system-hired employees were truly her greatest blessing. First, we need to complete official paperwork. Today's town trip held multiple goals: purchasing daily supplies, preparing wages for her staff, and most importantly, registering the business to obtain a homestay operating license. All government departments were housed within the same office building, and Chin-go had prepared ample paperwork, so she encountered very few obstacles while running her errands. She got her business license, food service permit, and hygiene certificate without a hitch, but she couldn't obtain the special operation permit. You've come to the wrong department. We Culture and Tourism Bureau can't issue this permit. It's handled by the Public Security Bureau, Director Lu said. Then he told his staff to brew tea for Chin-go and her two companions. The Public Security Bureau? Chin-go looked confused before smiling gently. This is my first time starting a business. I lack experience and came to the wrong place. Director Lu smiled and handed each of them a paper cup of brewed tea. It's not entirely a wasted trip. It takes quite a bit of nerve to plan to open your homestay without filing a report with our bureau first. Chin-go showed no trace of fear and laughed. I ought to have set aside special time to come formally, bringing some local specialties to register with you. Though it was a compliment, the words sounded natural and pleasant coming from Chin-go. There was genuine warmth mixed into Director Lu's polite smile. That wouldn't do. What if those local specialties hid 2 million yuan in them? Chin-ji's eyes crinkled into crescent moons. I'm hardly someone who could pull together 2 million yuan on a whim. Dad, stop teasing her, a bright, lovely female voice drifted in from the doorway. Chin-go looked up and was instantly struck. What a beautiful young woman. She had pink hair and vivid, sunny facial features. She wore a yellow camisole top paired with blue polka dot shorts, and a platinum necklace glinted brightly around her neck. Amid the black, white, and gray formal tones of the government office, she stood out dramatically. Songjin and Shi Rongji were both stunned by her outfit. Shi Rongji in particular clutched her teacup and dared not lift her head. So much fair skin exposed openly, she never imagined women could dress like this in this world. Songjin recovered far faster, masking her shock in an instant. When traveling abroad, seeing people wear unusual clothes meant such attire was commonplace. She could not disgrace her princess by gawking. The beautiful young woman who'd walked into the room smiled warmly at Chin-go. If you want that special operation permit, you'll first need a fire safety inspection certificate. If your homestay lacks proper fire extinguishers, emergency lights, and smoke alarms, you'll definitely fail. Thank you so much for the tip, Chin-go replied. I haven't gotten all that safety equipment yet. Every single item cost money, and cash was exactly what she was short of right now. Director Lu looked a little embarrassed as he introduced her. This is my daughter Lu Linxin. She dropped by to see me today. She doesn't work here, so her outfit's a little flashy. He shot Lu Linxin a sharp glance. Can't you see I have members of the public here for business? Lu Linxin grinned playfully. I'm just offering voluntary help to citizens, Dad. You're such an old stick in the mud. Standards for public decency are getting stricter and stricter these days. She held out her hand, asking Chin-go for a business card. When's your homestay opening? I'll bring a couple friends to check it out sometime. There's nothing fun to wander around here. I'm completely bored stiff. Her father was a bureau director and her mother ran a company. Money was never an issue for her. She just craved something new and interesting to pass the time. Chin-go stared at her outstretched hand, feeling a little awkward. This potential new customer came from a well-off, well-connected family yet. I don't have business cards, Chinga said apologetically, pulling out her phone. Can we add each other on WeChat instead, sister? I don't plan to print any cards. I'm going for an intimate, low-key vibe. Anyone who comes will just be a friend. Lu Linxin was surprised by how bold the young girl's words were, but she liked the idea of treating guests as friends. My standards are extremely high, you know. If I'm disappointed with your homestay, word will spread and ruin your reputation. She knew countless people across City B. Chinga spoke with total confidence. Come anytime you like, sister. I'll personally show you around myself and guarantee you'll love it. The scenic views around the old house spoke for themselves. Sounds good. Lu Linxin. Director Lu's expression turned stern. Have you no sense of propriety at all? Dad, I'm supporting your work by boosting local cultural tourism. Lu Linxin cooed, massaging his shoulders in a cajoling way. Don't be mad, okay? Chinga took that moment to excuse herself. Outside the government building, Shi Rongji remained dazed. This new world kept hitting her with one shocking revelation after another, metal carriages that moved without horses. Towering government halls bigger than any official compound she'd ever seen back home. Even more surprising, government officials were all warm and willing to answer every question without demanding gifts or favors. Women could wear revealing clothing without facing harsh judgment either. Back in her original world, such behavior would carry severe punishment. Was this what true equality looked like? Shi Rongji tilted her head to gaze at the neat, orderly government building, her eyes wide with awe. Yet, awe quickly melted into deep inferiority. Lady Songjin had seen all manner of grand sights, capable of plotting strategies and organizing groups for her princess. She never flinched from strange new things, always calm and composed. But Shi Rongji only knew how to style hair. She was easily frightened and constantly relied on the princess to look after her. So many people were braver and more capable than her. Did she even deserve to follow Chinga? Let's grab lunch, I'm starving. Qinji's clear voice pulled Shi Rongji back to reality. Everyone hold hands so we don't get separated in the crowded market ahead. Neither Songjin nor Shi Rongji owned a cell phone. If they wandered off, they might never find their way back. Qinga wrapped her fingers around Shi Rongji's hand, so thin and delicate that she couldn't help squeezing gently. The girl needed plenty of nourishment to fill out her frail frame. As someone who loved raising and caring for characters in simulation games, Qinji's urge to spoil her companions flared up intensely. Strands of loose hair fell across her cheeks, and Chinga tossed her head with a mumbled complaint. This is such a hassle. Shi Rongji summoned up her courage to speak. Princess, your hair's come loose. Chinga glanced down and saw her old, worn hair tie had snapped. She'd never cut her hair after starting work. Her black locks fell past her waist, cumbersome to walk around with untied. A stall selling hair ornaments sat right in front of them. Crystal hairpins for 6 yuan each. Feel free to look and try them on. The elderly stall vendor called out eagerly to passers-by. Chinga had never mastered hairpin styling. She'd watched tutorial videos online showing simple, elegant ancient hairstyles and practiced repeatedly. Yet every attempt ended up messy and lopsided. She figured she'd just buy an elastic band to tie a ponytail instead. Shi Rongji picked up a sky-blue crystal hairpin, marveling aloud. It's stunning, so clear and translucent. The surface was polished exquisitely, smooth as silk to the touch. Even the finest top-grade blue jade from her old world could never match such vivid, flawless clarity. Nor were there dozens of identical fine ornaments laid out casually on a street stall. Jewelry this fine would be unaffordable even for imperial nobles. Still, the weight felt off, far lighter than real crystal. Shi Rongji had styled the hair of high-ranking nobles since childhood, handling crystal, jadeite, agate, and pearls daily, yet she'd never felt a gemstone with such an odd texture. Songjin picked up another hairpin to examine closely. This doesn't feel like crystal or jade. What material is it? It's plastic, Chinga clarified for them. Real crystal could never cost just 6 yuan. The old vendor scowled crossly. Are you buying or not? If not, move along. Chinga stifled a laugh. Of course we're buying. What kind of vendor chases customers away? The vendor's scowl softened slightly. You just insisted my crystal hairpins are plastic. Chinga blinked innocently. I only told the truth. You troublesome girl, I'm not selling to you anymore, the vendor huffed. While they bickered, Shi Rongji had already twisted Qinji's hair into a simple single spiral bun, securing it with the sky blue hairpin. The ornament stood out vividly against her dark hair, creating a restrained, graceful look. It beautifully accentuated Qin Ji's fine features and poised bearing. Songjin stared, as if staring at an old acquaintance from her past, and murmured softly, "Princess, you look breathtaking." Qin Ge picked up a small hand mirror to admire her reflection. That simple bun had completely transformed her appearance, and she spun around excitedly to face Shirongji. "Rongji, you're incredible." Praise flushed Shirongji's cheeks bright red, and she ducked her head, her voice faint as a mosquito's buzz. "It's merely a trivial skill. Your beauty is innate, only hidden by plain, everyday clothes." "I'll take this hairpin," Qin Ge cut in. The vendor crossed his arms with a cold snort, suddenly refusing despite her clear fondness for it. "I said I won't sell it to you. Not unless you pay extra." Songjin grew furious at his sudden reversal of word. "Such a lovely hairstyle. Do we get the styling free when we buy a pin?" A female shopper, drawn by Qin Ji's elegant coiffure, wandered over to inquire. Songjin explained politely, "The hairstyle service isn't included with purchase. We styled it ourselves." "Oh, then I don't want one. We only came over because the hairstyle looked amazing. Without the styling help, the pin will just collect dust at home." The woman sighed disappointedly and turned to leave. As she walked away, several other young women prepared to follow. The vendor's heart ached at the sight of so many potential customers slipping away. He'd lose so much income. "We're leaving too," Qin Ge said, refusing to indulge his bad attitude, reaching to pull the hairpin from her bun. "Wait a minute." The vendor hurried to block her path, his gruff face twisted into an awkward, ingratiating grin. "Young lady, if you love this pin, you can have it free of charge." "Only," he hesitated, glancing toward Shirongji. Qin Ge read his intentions instantly from his expression. "Spit it out." The vendor chuckled sheepishly. "My wholesale cost for these hairpins isn't cheap. Your production cost is less than 2 yuan. These mass-produced plastic trinkets cost mere pennies when ordered in bulk from you." Qin Ge cut him off sharply. "Don't try to fool me." Her previous job had involved sourcing tourist souvenirs. Cheap trinkets with minimal production costs were marked up several times over once placed in retail stalls. These pins weren't even made of solid metal, just molded plastic. Mass production brought costs down even further. Caught red-handed, the vendor rubbed his hands awkwardly. "Let's make a deal. Have your sister style hair for my customers. If she does 100 hairstyles, I'll pay you 100 yuan." Qin Ge held up 2 fingers firmly. 200 yuan. The vendor threw up his hands in exasperation. "You're asking for far too much. Without her drawing crowds to your stall, you wouldn't sell 100 pins today," Qin Ge reasoned. Normally, he'd only shift 30 or 40. Plus, customers drawn by the hairstyling would browse and buy other trinkets too. He could wrap up sales early and head home. This deal would still net him a solid profit. The vendor weighed the pros and cons quickly. He offered a practical compromise. 1 yuan per hairstyle up to 100 customers, 2 yuan for every customer past 100. "Deal," Qin Ge agreed without further haggling. It was a win-win arrangement. Shirongji stood rigid with nervous uncertainty. "Princess, am I capable of this?" Qin Ge smiled warmly and patted her shoulder. "Rongji, you just lack self-confidence. Your styling skill is absolutely outstanding." She'd seen her reflection in the mirror minutes before. The simple bun suited her perfectly, clean and elegant with an air of quiet nobility. Qin Ge encouraged her gently. "Good craftsmanship speaks for itself. Customers will line up. Even if we don't sell many pins, we lose nothing. This is a chance to turn your talent into earnings, so seize it." Shirongji's heart swelled with resolve. If her princess believed in her, she would not fail. Meanwhile, Songjin had already called back the group of women who'd nearly left moments before, speaking with a soft, welcoming smile. "While styling won't be complimentary as a general rule, anyone who buys 1 crystal hairpin today will receive a custom single-pin hairstyle tailored to their face shape. All for the original 6 yuan price. We'll even walk you through recreating the look yourself." Delighted by the offer, the women lined up quickly, scanning the stall's payment code one after another and stepping forward to wait for Shirongji's styling. Songjin stood by to maintain order. "I'm first. Could you recommend a style for my round face? I'm terrible at doing my own hair. Will I be able to learn? I want the exact hairstyle she's wearing." One customer pointed toward Qin Ge. Shirongji hesitated uneasily. The princess's hairstyle was unique and special. She disliked the thought of copying it for strangers. "That style wouldn't flatter your facial structure." A double spiral bun would suit you far better. If you buy a second pin, I can style that for you. Sounds great, the woman replied cheerfully. Shirongji breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Chinga watched from the side with quiet satisfaction. Shirongji was already learning to market the stall's wares independently. More shoppers gathered around the stall, forming a long queue without the vendor needing to shout for business. At only 6 yuan per ornament with a free custom hairstyle, every customer thought they'd gotten an incredible bargain. Shirongji's cheeks flushed pink with excitement, her eyes sparkling brightly. She'd never imagined her lifelong styling craft could be so beloved by others. Well, look who's ignoring my warnings and daring to set up shop out here, a familiar, unpleasant voice drawled. Chinga recognized Su Fengxing instantly, the man who'd come to harass her at the old house before, only to get a bucket of dirty water dumped over his head by Songjin. He'd been wandering the market and spotted the bustling stall, catching sight of Chinga and her 2 companions tending to customers, including the woman who'd humiliated him previously. They'd blatantly disregarded his threats, and the thought stoked his burning rage. Su Fengxing sneered, aiming his words at the crowd of shoppers to sabotage Qinji's business. I'm only looking out for everyone's safety. Look at these 2 women beside her, they're shockingly gaunt. What if they carry contagious illnesses and pass them to customers? Can she take responsibility for that? No one should buy anything here, you could catch a sickness. The accusation left Shirongji's hands frozen mid-styling. She and Songjin had endured years of famine in their original world. Their emaciated frames marked them as outsiders no matter how neatly they dressed. Doubtful, wary glances swept over them from the waiting customers. In this modern era, it was unusual to see people so thin. What if the stranger's accusation held truth? A smug smirk tugged at Su Fengxing's lips as he pressed on. That girl doing everyone's hair is pale and scrawny. Who knows what dirt's trapped under her fingernails? Are you all comfortable letting someone so unhygienic touch your hair? Shirongji understood he was attacking her personally, burning with embarrassment. Had she brought shame to her princess? She spoke up weakly in her own defense. I'm clean. I'm only thin from years of insufficient food, and my nails have no dirt beneath them. She held out her hands for the crowd to inspect, yet the customer standing directly in front of her instinctively stepped backward. If she's that underweight, I can't risk catching some illness. I don't want to buy anything anymore. Tears welled in Shirongji's eyes before she could form another word to explain herself. Chinga flew into anger. Su Fengxing, you carry a great deal of excess weight yourself. How dare you judge others' health? You have no grounds to slander people with baseless accusations, and you learned nothing from your last embarrassing defeat here. You insolent girl, what did you just say to me? Su Fengxing glanced down at his bulging midsection, his face flushing crimson with rage. You're just a worthless outcast fired by your own uncle, yet you dare speak to me like this? Don't insult the princess. Shirongji suddenly stepped forward, spreading her arms to shield Chinga. All timidity vanished from her features, replaced by raw hostility and hatred. She did not fully grasp the full conflict, but she knew one thing clearly: she had to protect Chinga at all costs. She could not let her princess be harmed again. He could insult her all he wanted, but never Chinga. You deserve to be punished for this. Shirongji lifted her head, eyes glistening red with fury, glaring unblinkingly at Su Fengxing, ready to fight him if he took another step forward. Chinga stared in surprise. Shirongji hadn't grown nearly this upset when Su Fengxing had insulted her directly. Only when he'd spoken ill of Chinga had she flown into such protective rage. She glanced around for Songjin, who'd stepped away, then snapped at the stall vendor. Aren't you concerned about your business? This man's ruining your stall, why don't you intervene? The vendor shuffled over with a helpless sigh. Now, let's calm this disturbance. Can't we all compromise and get along peacefully? Chinga seethed at his cowardice. The man cared nothing for his own thriving business, choosing to appease the troublemaker instead of standing up for them. Nothing but a bully pleaser. What's causing this commotion? Songjin returned, leading a market administrator wearing a navy uniform over to the stall. The administrator surveyed the chaotic scene and asked sharply, "Who's disrupting market order here?" Chinga pointed straight at Su Fengxing. Him, administrator. Su Fengxing cut her off loudly to protest. This has nothing to do with me. The administrator shot him a sharp glare. I didn't ask for your input, stay quiet. Su Fengxing clamped his mouth shut resentfully. The administrator knew him well. Su Fengxing worked as a purchasing staff member for prosperous tourism company and visited the market regularly to buy local farm produce. Every time his stall ended up tangled in trouble. After dealing with one mess after another, everyone's opinion of him soured. Before, Su Fengxing only caused trouble at his own stall. Now he'd even dare pick fights beside other vendors' stalls. When talking to Qin Ge, the market administrator's tone softened a lot. He asked gently, "What just happened here?" Qin Ge told him everything truthfully, without adding any exaggerated details. The administrator nodded. It sounded exactly like something Su Fengxing would do. He turned to ask the surrounding customers and an elderly stall owner, "Did Su Fengxing start the conflict?" Everyone nodded. The old man spoke up directly. He was so aggressive. He started yelling at that young girl doing hairstyling. "I thought he was going to knock over my stall." Su Fengxing fumed and pointed at Shirongji. "She's dark and skinny. She obviously looks unwell." "Am I wrong?" Qin Ge shot back. "Does being poor mean you deserve mistreatment? What's wrong with being undernourished? You need proof before claiming someone's sick. I think you're the one with issues, running your mouth nonstop." After snapping at Su Fengxing, Qin Ge smiled faintly at the administrator. "Sorry, I got carried away." Sharp resentment still lingered in her eyes, paired with her navy hairpin and black hair, giving her a striking, imposing beauty. The administrator froze, his cheeks flushing slightly. Recovering quickly, he waved his hand and said it was fine. He cleared his throat and announced to the crowd in a clear voice, "We've sorted out the whole incident. Su Fengxing, you initiated provocation and disrupted market order. The fine is 80 yuan. Everyone may disperse." Su Fengxing's face twisted with anger. "Why me?" The administrator shot him a glance. "You can refuse to pay, but you'll never be allowed to set up a stall or trade at this market again. We can't handle someone as troublesome as you." In the end, Su Fengxing grudgingly paid the fine. The administrator immediately transferred the 80 yuan to Qin Ge. "Your friend suffered unfair treatment. This is only right. Our market won't keep this fine money." It was an unexpected windfall. 80 yuan was nothing much to Qin Ge, but it meant a great deal to Shirongji. Qin Ge accepted the money without hesitation. "Thank you so much, administrator." "It's no trouble." Some onlookers who'd watched the commotion looked confused. "Who was that troublemaker? He acted so arrogant." "You don't know? That's purchasing manager Su from Xingshi Company, the one whose spouse cheated on him." "His spouse cheated on him? No wonder he's so bitter and twisted inside." Su Fengxing kept hearing whispers behind his back, but whenever he spun around, he couldn't catch anyone talking. Qin Ge smiled to herself. Bad news traveled fast, while good news never spread far. Everyone knew about his spouse's infidelity except Su Fengxing himself. If he ever found out, he'd fly into a rage. He deserved every bit of it. Qin Ge turned to the elderly stall owner to settle their payment. "I counted just now, exactly 100 customers came by. Some bought more than one hairpin, but I won't count those extra sales. Give me 200 yuan. You're leaving already?" The old man sounded reluctant. In such a short time, over 100 customers had stopped by. If they stayed to help a little longer, he might sell out all his stock. "Obviously we are." Qin Ge barely held back an eye roll. "Where were you when that man was picking a fight earlier? Now you want us to stay?" The old man looked embarrassed and tried to make excuses. He was far too fierce. "I'm just an old man. I couldn't stand up to him." Qin Ge retorted. "Could the three of us frail women stand up to him then? Hand over the money." The old man slowly fumbled for his wallet. Songjin casually added a remark. "The administrator can't be far away yet." The old man's movements sped up instantly. He stopped rummaging through his wallet and pulled out his phone to scan Qin Ji's code for 200 yuan. "Come back anytime. I'll be right here every day." Qin Ge ignored him. With 280 yuan now added to her account, Qin Ge felt thoroughly pleased. "This money's all earned by you, Rongji. Buy whatever you'd like later, don't hold back." Shirongji blushed and said softly, "I'd like to get something to eat first." The three walked into a shop serving Longjiang braised pork rice. 3 bowls of braised pork rice were quickly brought to their table. Shirongji stared at the steaming bowl, swallowing hard, utterly amazed. Just now, they hadn't handed over any silver coins, only waved a small shiny metal slab, and the meal appeared. What kind of treasure was this? Could she and Songjin ever own one too? 1 bottle of vitamin C drink each. Qin Ge set the drinks down and glanced across the table. "Why aren't you eating?" Songjin and Shirongji only picked up their chopsticks after her word. Tender, gelatinous braised pork melted the moment it touched their tongues. The rich collagen brought an incredible sense of satisfaction. Strong savory braising spices, mixed with fragrant rendered meat fat burst across their taste buds. The connective tissue had been stewed completely soft, jiggling just like jelly. Songjin and Shirongji glanced at each other, then chewed and swallowed greedily. Watching them eat with complete absorption, Chinga smiled. For people used to rich, regular meals, braised pork rice was heavy and greasy, only suited for laborers doing physical work. But for Songjin and Shirongji, who clearly rarely got enough oil and meat, this meal was perfect. After finishing about half their bowls, the two slowed their pace. Humanity's craving for rich, salty flavors was rooted deep in instinct. This meal satisfied them completely. It was like parched farmland finally receiving a nourishing rain, quenching their long-held hunger for meat. Shirongji spooned up rice soaked in savory meat sauce. She knew how costly the spices used for braising meat were in their world. An ounce of spice was worth an ounce of gold. Even wealthy households could barely afford them. Yet Princess Qin used heaps of these precious spices without a second thought. She didn't waste a single drop of sauce, nearly licking the bowl clean. Chinga twisted open their drink bottles for them, have some to cut through the grease. One sip filled their mouths with cool, tangy citrus flavor. It was an intense, refreshing sensation. Even as a former palace head lady, Songjin could never afford icy drinks every day back home. Every beverage here was chilled, leaving their mouths fresh and watery. She couldn't identify the fruit base, bright, sweet-sour with a citrus aroma, yet not quite citrus fruit. This must cost a fortune, Shirongji said timidly, worrying if the princess could afford it. Just over 70 yuan total for all this meat. It's really affordable, Chinga said after paying the bill. Seeing them still stunned, she comforted them. The raw ingredients aren't expensive. You're mostly paying for the chef's skill and convenience. If we cooked this ourselves at home, the cost would drop by more than half. Shirongji couldn't believe such delicious food was far less extravagant than she'd imagined. Ice and fine spices were luxuries reserved only for high-ranking nobles in her world. During years of famine, every grain of food skyrocketed in price. A single bowl of this rich, oily polished rice braised pork would sell for an astronomical sum, and even with money, you needed noble status to taste it. Was this place some kind of paradise? Any luxury could be bought, as long as you had money. Shirongji stared at her empty bowl, lost in thought for a long time. Meanwhile, Songjin's mind raced amid her shock. If the shop sold food mainly for its cooking skill, what if royal chefs cooked for the princess? Could the princess cut costs and earn far more profit? But she'd eaten so much her mind moved slower than usual. This 280 yuan is money you earned yourselves. Tell me what you want to buy, and I'll take you shopping, Chinga said with a grin. The money was their labor's reward, not a handout from her, bypassing the system's tracking. Supplies bought with it should be able to travel back with them to their world. The two stood up in surprise. We're shopping more? Of course, Chinga raised an eyebrow. You worked hard for this money. Why not enjoy the fruits of your labor? We already spent quite a bit on lunch, Shirongji said instinctively. I cover meals for anyone working for me. We agreed on that, Chinga replied. But still, no buts. Chinga lifted a hand to cut her off. Shirongji stiffened, bowing her head obediently and falling silent. How could she forget this was the princess? After filling her stomach, her wits had dulled so much she dared to question the princess's words. This is what you've rightfully earned, Chinga softened her tone seeing her shrink like a timid quail. You were bold enough to stand up to that rude man earlier, carry that courage with you. Shirongji had many fine qualities and exceptional skill at hairstyling, but she suffered from severe low self-esteem. That wouldn't do. Timid, compliant people were easy targets for bullying. Shirongji lifted her head. I was terrified at first, but when he insulted you, all fear vanished and only anger remained. I had to protect you, princess. Her courage stemmed entirely from Chinga. Chinga fell silent for a moment. I had no confidence on my own, but with you by my side, I found my resolve, Songjin mumbled quietly, her voice trembling. The princess had lost her memories and didn't understand how vital she was to the remaining people of Qing. When the princess vanished, famine left countless villagers hopeless, many choosing to end their own lives in despair. But now they knew their princess still lived. The broken spirits of all surviving refugees had reignited at that news. People needed hope to keep living. As long as their princess survived, even the harshest days felt bearable. What's more, life for the refugees would only keep improving under her care. These past 2 days, everyone had eaten full bowls of congee, all thanks to the princess. Qin Ji's fingertips tingled under their sincere, fervent gazes. One of you drenched Su Fengxing head to toe, and the other yelled him into submission. I've got two fierce, loyal allies right beside me. Qin Ge praised them openly. Song Jin and Shi Rongji's faces flushed bright red. Seeing them grow a little more confident, Qin Ge smiled. Let's go pick out your goods. We have a three-wheeler cart. We can haul as much as we need back to the old house. Qin Ge led them into a grain and fresh produce supermarket. The shop wasn't huge, yet Song Jin and Shi Rongji were utterly stunned. Rows of rice, flour, oil, fresh fruit, and meat lined the shelves. Song Jin even spotted spicy strip snacks. Wow! The store's interior left Shi Rongji wide-eyed. Polished stone tiles covered every inch of the floor, smooth enough to reflect their own silhouettes when they looked down. Even in broad daylight, bright lamps lit every corner. These lights gave off no warmth at all. Such extravagant waste would only be permitted for emperors in their world. Her heart trembled with awe. Could ordinary commoners enjoy imperial-level comfort every single day here? Qin Ge stood examining labels beside sacks of grain, 25-kilogram bags of polished rice and refined wheat flour. 100 yuan a sack, reasonably priced, not top tier, but decent enough. Song Jin tried to stop her without thinking. Polished grains cost too much. We ought to buy unrefined brown rice instead. Qin Ge laughed and led her to the bulk grain section to show her the price tags for brown rice. Song Jin looked embarrassed. I cannot read these characters. The writing here is completely different from our script. Without you guiding us, we couldn't do anything once we step outside. We don't even understand how to use these metal payment devices everyone carries. Qin Ge simply explained the price differences to her. Song Jin's eyes went wide with shock. Brown rice and rough wheat flour cost twice as much as refined grains. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Qin Ge explained, our production systems work differently here. Anything handmade or produced in small batches costs more. Mass-produced goods made by machines, with little manual labor and lots of artificial additives, are far cheaper. Qin Ge pulled Shi Rongji close. Take Rongji's styling craft, for example. Very few people can replicate her skill, so it's highly valuable. Customers are willing to pay high prices for it. Tourist scenic areas charge hundreds, even thousands of yuan just for a full hair and outfit styling set. Shi Rongji smiled shyly. As she spoke, a new money-making idea popped into Qin Ji's mind. If others could run styling services, there was no reason she couldn't too. Shi Rongji was a ready-made skilled artisan, a perfect unique selling point to draw customers. Qin Ge grew more convinced the plan would work the more she thought about it. Once her homestay opened, she absolutely wanted to test this business idea. Wasting her only as a cleaner would be such a loss. Shi Rongji barely concealed her excitement and whispered to Song Jin, does that mean all our refugee people's traditional crafts are priceless treasures, per the princess's words? Song Jin nodded solemnly, they absolutely are. The villagers of Peach Tree Village were no ordinary folk. Every one of them was a master craftsman trained within the palace. Even back in their realm, their talents were 1 in 10,000. They'd only hidden their skills because their low social standing barred them from public work. Shi Rongji's cheeks flushed with joy. She wasn't useless after all. She could truly help the princess. After stocking up on rice and flour, Qin Ge picked out daily supplies for herself: shampoo, conditioner, towels, pajamas, laundry detergent, soap, plus piles of fruit, vegetables, and assorted snacks. She bought nearly everything she needed in store. The village had no parcel delivery station, so ordering packages online would only create hassle. After all the shopping, the 500 yuan system reward was completely spent, and Qin Ji's personal savings dropped to only 8,000 yuan. She'd worked 4 full years yet barely saved any money. A portion of her wages went to rent, utilities, and daily meals. More funds covered her grandmother's medical bills and home renovations on the old house. She'd even remodeled the outdated bathroom there. The largest expense by far had been her grandmother's funeral. Glancing at her phone balance, Qin Ge felt no real panic. Even 100,000 yuan wouldn't drastically shift her current plans anyway. Plus, the system drastically cut down her labor costs. Every hurdle could be overcome step by step. She just needed to focus on the tasks right in front of her, like hiring carpenters tomorrow to refurbish the old house's wooden furniture. Cloth shoes, 10 yuan a pair. 10 yuan each. Clearance clothing sale, 2 pieces for 30 yuan. Stepping out of the supermarket, Qin Ge heard street vendors shouting clearance advertisements. She glanced at Song Jin and Shi Rongji's outfits. Songjin fared slightly better, wearing the second-hand clothes Chin-go had given her the previous day. But Shirongji's ragged garments looked threadbare and worn, like something worn through years of severe food shortage. She still had the 80 yuan market fine money left, and there was no point letting it sit unused. Let's go browse those stalls. The plain cloth shoes came in only 2 colors, black and red, with all sizes available for trying on. Shirongji bought 1 pair for herself. Songjin picked out 2 pairs, one for herself, one for Daizhong to wear. Unfortunately, there were no small sizes for young children, otherwise Songjin would have skipped buying shoes for herself and Daizhong entirely. They spent 30 yuan total, leaving 50 remaining. Chin-go used her bargaining skills to haggle with the clothing stall owner. Look at this fabric, it's pure polyester blend, no natural fibers, it won't breathe at all. Sell both pieces to me for 50 yuan. The stall owner pulled a long face. I'm already selling these at a loss just to clear stock. I can't turn a profit at such a low price. Chin-go pinched the fabric and shook it slightly while pointing out its flaws. This is bulk wholesale merchandise, outdated, unfashionable styles that no one wants anymore. I'll take both pieces, just cut me a fair deal. The owner countered, let's meet halfway, 55 yuan for the 2. Chin-go refused to budge, 50 yuan exactly. If you won't agree, I'll walk away. The owner threw up his hands, fine, 50 it is, you drive a hard bargain. He wondered how such a young, pretty girl could haggle fiercely over just 5 yuan. Chin-go grinned and quickly scanned the payment code, feeling proud of her successful negotiation. She hopped onto the 3-wheeler cart loaded with all their goods and headed back toward the old house. Chin-ji's mood was wonderful the whole ride, even the wind felt sweet against her skin. Nothing beat the joy of stockpiling daily necessities. Bit by bit, she was building up her old house from scratch, renovating it into something warm and welcoming, growing her savings steadily. Just imagining the bustling scene once her homestay opened filled her with boundless motivation. Chin-ji's out helping a street vendor sell hair ornaments with her workers? After listening to Su Fengxing's report, Qin Zixing burst out laughing. Can she even make enough money just to feed herself? How utterly unambitious, haha. Learning Chin-ji's homestay project had barely gotten off the ground filled Qin Zixing with vindictive satisfaction. He'd always deeply resented his cousin. Even though Chin-go was only his distant cousin, she carried far more weight with his father than he, the man's own son. Company staff always ran ideas past Chin-go before consulting him, the official manager. Did they think he meant nothing at all? Thankfully Chin-go had quit her job to chase this silly homestay dream of hers. Let her learn her lesson and see how little she could accomplish without the company's resources backing her up. Without the company platform, Chin-go was nothing at all. Why hadn't she left sooner? Where did she even find those employees of hers? Qin Zixing tapped his desk impatiently. Su Fengxing pulled out secretly taken photos and handed them over. Qin Zixing's eyes widened the second he saw the pictures. These are the workers she hired? Su Fengxing confirmed, absolutely genuine. They're likely illiterate with terrible manners. I went over to ask politely, yet they yelled at me and dumped dirty water all over my head. Su Fengxing grew more aggrieved, recounting the incident. Enough, Qin Zixing cut him off, tired of his whining. You've done good work. You'll receive a bonus at month's end. Keep watching her movements. Su Fengxing forced an awkward smile. It's my duty to serve the company. No trouble at all. Once Su Fengxing left, Qin Zixing's grin never faded from his face. Everyone knew tourism relied entirely on quality service, and small boutique homestays demanded exceptionally attentive staff. What kind of staff had Chin-go hired? Gaunt, malnourished-looking women who looked as though they hadn't eaten a proper meal in years. Customers would take one look and lose all desire to stay. Not to mention their rude behavior, shouting and dumping water on guests. If Chin-ji's homestay ever turned a profit, he'd write his own name backwards. She had no money to speak of, trying to build a business from nothing deep in the mountains. The more Qin Zixing thought about it, the more convinced he was Chin-go had lost her mind. Is this really my father's standard for judging capable people? Back at the old house, Songjin and Shirongji rushed to unload goods from the 3-wheeler cart, nearly blocking Chin-go from lifting a single sack herself. She barely squeezed through the gap between them to grab a sack of rice. She lifted it barely 2 centimeters off the ground before a sharp twinge shot through her lower back. And she dropped the sack heavily back onto the floor. Chin-go stared in shock. She'd ranked top 10 in physical fitness tests back in university. Can't you even carry a sack of rice after working 2 years? While Chin-go stood dumbfounded, Shirongji finished one trip and came over to move the rice. She bent her waist, wrapped both arms around the rice sack, lifted it backward with ease, and slung the 50-pound sack of rice neatly onto her shoulders. Chin-ge felt utterly ashamed. She never imagined that slender Shirongji possessed such great strength. It seemed office workers who sat sedentary all day paled in physical stamina compared to young girls who labored in the fields every day. Once they tidied everything up, Chin-ge told Shirongji to change into the new clothes she'd bought. It was a plain long-sleeved dress with a thin elastic waistband, white with tiny colorful floral prints scattered across the fabric. The style had been popular decades ago, looking dated and a little tacky by modern standards. "Your Highness, does this look all right? Isn't the neckline cut too low?" Shirongji emerged clutching the hem of the dress after changing, her tone filled with unease as she asked Chin-ge. "It looks wonderful. It only shows a little of your collarbone, it's not low at all." Chin-ge's eyes brimmed with admiration. The dress itself was nothing special, but Shirongji had a delicate oval face and large bright eyes, her long hair pinned to one side with a pale blue resin hairpin. Slender all over, the dress accentuated her slim waist perfectly. Paired with her shy, downcast gaze, the slight tackiness of the outfit transformed into an endearing, pure charm. Rustic and innocent all at once. In an era flooded with artificially enhanced beauties, this kind of natural look was rare and instantly memorable. "Turn around for me to see." Shirongji obediently spun in a circle. This 50 yuan was well spent. Chin-ge nodded with a grin. Both Songjin and Shirongji had lovely, regular features, yet malnutrition had left their skin dull and sallow. With steady meals to nourish them and nicer outfits, they'd be just as striking as the online influencers everyone fawned over. Still, dresses for 25 yuan apiece were far too cheap and shoddy. Once she hired more staff, she'd need to design unified uniforms for everyone. She stroked her chin, wondering what style would suit them best. After receiving Chin-ge's praise, Shirongji grew bashful, staring at the ground while twisting the dress fabric between her fingers. The cloth felt fantastic, light, thin, and durable. It didn't chafe like rough linen, nor snag easily like silk. It would surely last for years. Chin-ge told her and Songjin to put on the cloth shoes as well. They were traditional Beijing cloth shoes embroidered with peach blossoms across the uppers. The machine stitching only added a subtle touch to the plain canvas surface. Chin-ge painted them a bright future. "Once I earn enough money, I'll hire professional designers to create custom staff uniforms just for you all." Their wages wouldn't be high, so employee benefits had to be generous. Songjin nodded silently. In time, skilled embroiderers would surely come to serve Her Highness. For the rest of the afternoon, Chin-ge, Songjin, and Shirongji cleared all the weeds growing around the old house. Then gathered cobblestones to pave winding paths. With weeds swept away and smooth cobblestones laid down, the grounds carried a casual, unrefined beauty. The 3-story old house stood tall and spacious, every room fitted with carved wooden window frames. Stepping through the front gate, visitors were met with neat cobblestone and bluestone walkways. To the left of the paths stretched plots of abandoned rice paddies overgrown with foxtail grass, sage, sedge, and Chinese milk vetch. The milk vetch was in full bloom right now, tiny magenta blossoms dotting the lush green carpet of grass. Chin-ge almost wished she could turn into a buffalo to graze on the soft, tender grass. Any buffalo would be delighted to feed on such fresh, sweet vegetation. To the right lay an enormous pond stretching far beyond sight. Its calm surface rippled gently, and water birds skimmed across the water now and then, letting out clear, echoing cries. One side of the pond was lined with waist-high green reeds. Beside the reeds spread a wide stretch of soft green meadow. Following the field ridges led to rolling forested mountains in the distance. The mountains were thick with bamboo and other trees, inherited by Chin-ge's grandmother from her own mother. Peak after peak rose and fell, their soft outlines fading into thin mist, just like ink-washed landscape paintings. This was the exact scenery ancient people would have seen 1,000 years ago. Chin-ge drew a deep breath, filling her lungs with crisp air scented with fresh foliage and faint woody fragrance. Her whole body felt light and unburdened. Another selling point, an untouched forest oxygen bar. They also cleared the overgrown backyard vegetable plot. It spanned nearly as much land as the rice paddies. Once she planted vegetable seeds, they'd have an endless supply of fresh produce. After finishing all the work, Chin-ge's body ached, yet her spirit felt utterly fulfilled. Working on this old house brought visible, tangible progress with every task she completed. Working for a corporate job, by contrast, offered no clear end or hope in sight. Chinga thought to herself, if choosing this rural life where every effort bears fruit counts as slacking off from the rat race, then she'd gladly live this way forever. Seeing that Songjin and Shi Rongji had worked 6 full hours, Chinga told them to stop and handed over their wages. Your Highness, we cannot take this money. Songjin gestured toward the sacks of grain and the new clothes on their bodies. We've already received so much compensation. A single sack of rice alone was worth far more than 60 yuan. You must take it. Qin Ji's tone turned firm. The rice, flour, clothes, and shoes are rewards for your labor, not charity from me. This cash is your proper wage, you cannot refuse it. Now that they had rice and flour to sustain them for a while, Chinga gave each of them an equal portion of eggs and milk, priced at 60 yuan total. Handle the eggs carefully, they break easily. The rice, flour, eggs, and milk made for a heavy load. Chinga turned to fetch a handcart from the storage barn so they could wheel their supplies home, only to find the 2 women and all their goods vanished without a trace. They left that quickly? Peach Blossom Village. Songjin and Shi Rongji trundled slowly out of the back mountain, carrying sacks of grain and their wages slung over their shoulders. They'd wanted to chat more with Chinga, yet a sudden intuitive pull told them they could no longer stay in that otherworldly space. Daring not to linger, they left without a proper farewell and returned to Peach Blossom Village with their earnings. Palace Lady Song, Misher, you've finally come back. The surviving descendants of the fallen Qing kingdom swarmed forward to greet them. Back at the old house, Chinga stared at the empty doorway and nodded in genuine admiration. They're incredibly strong. She knew she could never carry such heavy supplies and depart that fast herself. Daily physical labor truly built up stamina. On her way to the storage barn, Chinga spotted packets of flower seeds left behind by her grandmother. Her grandmother's favorite flower was the hosta, pure white, sweet-scented, and capable of repelling insects. It grew vigorously, sprouting abundantly from just a handful of seeds with minimal care. A lifelong lover of gardening, her grandmother had left behind countless varieties of flower seeds. Chinga scattered the seeds along both sides of the stone paths, tucking them into the gaps between cobblestones. Hostas grew quickly, and before long, the walkways would bloom with flowers every step of the way. 500 yuan in cash and a smart electric rice cooker waited unclaimed in her system storage. She placed the rice cooker in the kitchen, tucked the cash into her wallet, then hurried toward the back mountain. She was eager to witness the changes brought by the system's boosted comfort rating. She wondered exactly what the improved comfort level entailed. When she reached the mountainside, Chinga gasped at the system's miraculous power. The mountain looked unchanged from the outside, yet its interior had been refined into a seamless blend of order and wilderness. There was no trace of artificial construction disrupting its natural charm. The narrow, rocky trail winding up the mountain had been transformed into a wide, smooth bluestone pathway, passable even in heavy rain. Trees lining the road grew in perfect harmony, their branches curving gently to shade travelers without blocking the path, lending the trail a serene, secluded atmosphere. Besides the main thoroughfare, smaller bluestone footpaths branched off at intervals, tempting wanderers to explore deeper into the woods. These side paths split into even narrower trails, sparking curiosity about what lay around every bend. Unable to resist temptation, Chinga left the main road to follow one winding footpath. The smaller trails brimmed with wild charm. Wild mushrooms, ripe berries, and tender young vegetables dotted the sides at every turn, like hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Rounding a bend, she stumbled upon a sprawling thicket of fully ripe wild berries. Chinga plucked a plump, bright red raspberry and popped it into her mouth. It balanced 8 parts sweet to 2 parts tart, juicy and refreshing, releasing a rich floral sweetness across her tongue the moment it burst open. Delicious! Berry thickets like this spread all across the mountain, bearing fruit in every shade of red, purple, and gold, most of which Chinga could not name. The main road and side trails offered entirely distinct scenery. Strolling the wide main path granted unobstructed views of quiet, clear green woodland, leading straight to the mountain's summit in simple, uncomplicated peace. The winding side trails, by contrast, satisfied every urge to explore and uncover hidden gems. The back mountain hosted countless tree varieties alongside bamboo, fruit trees, and ornamental specimens alike: plum, chestnut, apple, peach, pear, mulberry, fig, red bayberry, hawthorn, and more, alongside silk tree, rose, pine, camellia, pagoda tree, and oak. Every single tree had been planted by her grandmother's own hands. When she was 8 years old, she'd helped her grandmother plant a red bayberry sapling here too. Chinga wandered onward, picking fruit, tasting berries, and reminiscing about her grandmother as she walked. As long as her grandmother's trees still stood, it felt as though her grandmother remained right beside her. Home is wherever the heart finds peace. She loved the bustling modern city, yet the quiet stability of Bamboo Mountain Village was something the metropolis could never offer. The twisting footpaths led her to a small mountain pond, its water crystal clear, revealing plump, slow-moving fish swimming along the bottom. Amused by their leisurely pace, Chinga picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. Plop! The stone hit the surface, sending ripples splashing outward. In an instant, the dozens of fish that had drifted motionlessly scattered in every direction. Wow, Chinga had never realized how many hidden treasures this mountain held. Returning to the main path, she felt no trace of fatigue and hiked all the way to the summit brimming with excitement. 3 natural open-air hot springs waited at the peak. Her grandmother had told her this mountain was an extinct volcano, its thermal water rising from deep underground. Though exposed to the sky, the hot spring pools were shielded by thick bamboo groves that blocked sunlight and rain, completely concealing the bathing area from outsiders' eyes and ensuring full privacy. The pool floors and surrounding edges were formed naturally from volcanic quartz rock, reshaped by the system's comfort boost into smooth, tiered ledges. The ledges were perfect for stepping into the water, leaning against, or setting down belongings. No extra decorations were needed. Raw natural beauty was unmatched. Unlike ordinary spring water, the volcanic hot springs brimmed with minerals and trace elements. Regular soaks strengthened the body and nourished the skin. Thick mist curled above the warm water, framed by emerald bamboo, creating a scene straight out of a fairyland. After taking in every view, Chinga descended slowly, her pockets stuffed with nearly 3 pounds of wild berries, her legs weak from the climb. The old saying held true, going up the mountain is easy, coming down is hard. Thankfully the system had smoothed the downhill trails, otherwise her legs would ache too badly to get out of bed tomorrow. She regretted not bringing a change of clothes to soak in the hot springs, yet she could return any time she pleased. Her grandmother had left a private indoor hot spring house hidden away, known only to Chinga. As the owner of this land, she deserved such exclusive comforts. Satisfied, Chinga left the mountain with her sack of berries. Any leftover fruit could be preserved with sugar or simmered into jam, and the refrigerator ensured nothing would go to waste. Chewing the sweet tart berries, a faint sad smile tugged at her lips, stirred by warm nostalgia. Thank you, grandmother. Peach Blossom Village. The surviving descendants of the fallen Qing kingdom stared at the grain supplies with shining eyes, overcome with emotion. So much rice and flour. Many teared up with joy. Her Highness truly lives. Of course Her Highness lives. We would never have brought back such abundant food without her. Back among the villagers of Peach Blossom Village, Shirongji perked up excitedly when she heard someone mention their princess. Her Highness bought me brand new clothes and gave us sacks of grain. I only worked a little each day, yet she gave us so many eggs and cartons of milk. Her Highness is the kindest person in the whole world. Look for yourselves. No one could doubt their words. The piles of supplies behind Songjin and Shirongji were undeniable proof. Songjin stood tall above the crowd and spoke in a clear, commanding voice. Miss Rongji and I received ample provisions from Her Highness, and I will distribute everything evenly among you all shortly. Her gaze swept over the villagers, her tone cooling as she posed a question. Does anyone here still refuse to believe Her Highness is alive? Silence fell across the crowd. Has Chao Hengji arrived yet? A villager nodded. Shall we send someone to fetch him? Songjin sighed softly. There is no need. One day he will understand. The hope Her Highness brought them was no fleeting illusion or empty fantasy. Songjin began dividing the supplies. There was far more to share than the day before, when each villager only received a handful of grain. Every person got 1 jean of grain, 1 egg, and 1 carton of milk. As one of the survivors, Shirongji stepped forward to help hand out the goods beside Songjin. Form a single line, everyone will receive a share. Parting with the polished white rice and fine wheat flour tugged at Shirongji's heart. She lacked Songjin's grand foresight and experience managing large groups of people, yet she knew she would return to see Her Highness tomorrow and receive more ample food then. The grain she gave away today meant nothing in the long run. If Her Highness stood here, she would share all this food with the villagers too, so Shirongji refused to hold anything back for herself. The villagers stared at their rations, exchanging confused glances. They recognized rice, flour and eggs, yet the small heavy rectangular cartons felt foreign, and they could not identify what lay inside. What is this brick-shaped thing? Li Dali, the village cook, pointed at a milk carton and asked Shirongji. Shirongji looked troubled. I do not know what this box contains. Her Highness gave it to me, and I left in such a hurry I never asked how to use it. Is it milk, perhaps? Li Dali guessed. How do we open it? Maybe we bite through the packaging? Shirongji answered uncertainly. Li Dali stared at her in disbelief. You spent an entire day with Her Highness and learned nothing at all? If we bite it open, won't the milk spill everywhere? Shirongji bit her lower lip, embarrassed. Songjin walked over, tore the straw tab on the back of the carton, and inserted the thin plastic straw for Li Dali. It opens like this. I never would have guessed, Li Dali exclaimed, taking a deep sip without hesitation. Rich, creamy milk filled his mouth, and he took another greedy gulp at once. The other villagers copied his movements, tearing open their own cartons to taste the milk. Songjin recalled Qin Ji's reminder and warned them, sip gently through the straw, do not blow air back into the carton. Her words barely left her mouth when Li Dali burst into a coughing fit. Milk spurted out of his straw as he blew air inside the carton. He scrambled to catch the spilling liquid with his mouth, choking red-faced as he struggled to finish the milk. This is what happens when you blow air into the carton, Songjin finished with a helpless sigh. The villagers laughed and teased him. You fool, we told you not to blow, yet you had to test it. Li Dali's face burned bright red. I only wanted to see what would happen. He drained the entire carton in a few gulps, licking his lips afterward. This rich milk is meant only for nobles. Why would Her Highness give us so much? They also had 2 full sacks of rice and flour, enough for 1 jin per person today. One villager twisted his milk carton back and forth, studying its surface. It is not oiled paper nor cloth, and it repels water. What material could this possibly be? Li Dali turned to Shirongji. What work did you perform for Her Highness in that otherworldly place? Is Her Highness immensely wealthy? Shirongji shook her head. Her Highness lives quite simply. She works hard every day, laboring just like the rest of us. What? Li Dali gasped in shock. Shirongji continued speaking. All these supplies came from the money Her Highness earned helping us craft hair ornaments. She even bought this set of clothing for me. She tugged at her dress sleeve to show them. She also treated us to pork knuckle rice for a meal. The memory of the delicious dish made her smack her lips wistfully. She wished they could eat such good food every day. Her Highness has not yet earned much money, though. The rice paddies lie empty, unplanted, and no one is there to help her tend the land. The villagers could not hide their indignation at the thought of their princess struggling to make ends meet while they received her charity. How can you spend Her Highness's hard-earned money without working to support her in return? Shirongji hung her head in shame. I told her I could not accept it, yet she insisted. Enough, Songjin cut through the murmurs. This is an agreement between Her Highness and the celestial forces. Without it, we would never be able to meet her again. Her Highness knows far better than us what steps she must take next. The villagers fell silent, overcome with guilt. They could do nothing to aid their princess, yet they accepted her food and gifts freely. We live off Her Highness's generosity, yet offer no service in return. Our hearts are heavy with shame, many murmured, clutching their sacks of grain, tears welling in their eyes. Songjin comforted them. Do not grieve prematurely. Her Highness has grand plans, and a day will come when she will need all of your strengths. I have not yet received new divine instructions, so I cannot assign tasks to anyone without permission. The villagers' guilt eased slightly at her words. They only wished they could serve Her Highness, instead of living uselessly without purpose. Joy over Her Highness's survival and the abundance of food filled every villager's face. Coupled with Li Dali's silly mishap with the milk carton, the heavy weight that had lingered over the survivors for years finally lifted from their hearts. The atmosphere was light and lively, just like during the Lunar New Year celebrations. The crowd slowly dispersed. Only Li Dali lingered, unwilling to leave. He quietly pulled Songjin aside and asked her, has the next person to work at the princess's residence been chosen yet? If no one's been picked, how about me? Li Dali thumped his lean chest hard, producing loud thudding sounds. I've prepared every single meal the princess has eaten since she was little. No one knows her taste better than I do. I'm not boasting, but as a royal chef, you know my cooking skills well, Lady Shanggong. The princess must be short of people to cook and do laundry for her right now. I, Li Dolly, may not be good at anything else, but I excel at this. Let me go serve her, and I'll make sure she's taken perfect care of. He'd heard Shirongji talk about it earlier. In the immortal realm, there was something called a supermarket. It stocked all kinds of ingredients. Even common folk could buy whatever they needed as long as they had money. As a cook, nothing pained him more than lacking ingredients to make delicious food. But in this immortal world, there was milk, fine polished rice, and flour, perfect for him to showcase his craft. Songjin stared steadily at Li Dolly without uttering a word. Li Dolly scratched his thick beard. What's wrong? Songjin sighed. Dolly, I'll be honest with you. Your appearance isn't suitable. Li Dolly had a rough, rugged look. His short hair stood straight up on his head like a hedgehog's spines, framed by a full, long, dense beard. He almost always wore an apron, with a gleaming sharp kitchen knife clutched in one hand. Though he'd lost weight lately, his broad, sturdy frame remained. He looked less like a royal chef and more like a bandit. Songjin spoke plainly. I'm afraid you'll frighten the princess. Li Dolly gave an awkward grin. I can shave off this beard tomorrow easy. But there's nothing I can do about my frame. He flexed his bicep. You need a build like mine to lift those huge iron woks for stir-frying. This knife is my family heirloom too. I keep the knife with me as long as I live. The knife perishes only when I do. The tough man's eyes grew watery at those words. All of us who've served the princess have stayed by her side for at least 4 or 5 years, some for over a decade. We're utterly loyal to her. The princess is our whole reason for living. I just want to catch a glimpse of her to see if she's well, if she still enjoys her meals. The princess used to love the icy sweet cheese custard I made more than anything. Songjin hesitated for a moment, but still turned Li Dolly down. Wait for fate's turn. You will get your chance someday. Li Dolly let out a long, mournful cry. What if I'm the last one to ever get the chance? Songjin pretended not to hear him and hurried away. Carpenter Zhang, wait a moment. Back at home, Carpenter Zhang's mind kept replaying Songjin's words. Come with me to the princess temple at dawn tomorrow to meet the princess. Get yourself ready. A plain carpenter like him, unable to fight or flatter anyone, was actually going to meet the princess? He'd watched Li Dolly plead endlessly just now, yet Songjin hadn't relented one bit. He was far worse with words than Li Dolly, who had years of history serving the princess. Unease churned in Carpenter Zhang's heart, though his dark facial skin hid all trace of his worry as he mechanically poured rice into the pot. Would seeing the princess cure Xiao Tao's illness? He'd only gotten a handful of rice yesterday. After eating congee, Xiao Tao's condition had briefly improved, but by the next morning, her cold had worsened, and she'd developed a fever. He knew the years of malnutrition plaguing Xiao Tao couldn't be fixed with one bowl of rice porridge. Carpenter Zhang stirred the simmering congee. Once it finished cooking, the white rice grains bloomed into thick, fragrant porridge. Recalling how Songjin had opened the milk packets, he poured an entire bag of milk into the pot. For days they'd only had scratchy wild vegetable soup to eat, making the rich, creamy milk an incomparable treat. Everyone else had drunk milk back then, but he'd held on to a share. Xiao Tao's mother's last wish before passing had been for their daughter to live well. He had no great ability, and Xiao Tao had suffered alongside him for too long. All the milk would go to her. Carpenter Zhang ladled the congee into a bowl and roused the feverish, drowsy Xiao Tao. Eat. A warm aroma of rice, mixed with milk, washed over her. Xiao Tao strained her eyes open. Staring at the steaming bowl of milk congee, her mouth watered instantly. It smelled wonderful, far better than yesterday's plain rice porridge. I'm not hungry, father. You eat it instead. Xiao Tao swallowed hard as she spoke, turning the bowl down. Eat. Carpenter Zhang repeated the command in a heavier tone. How could her body recover if she refused food? His brows furrowed deeply, hardening his square features even more. He pressed the bowl firmly into her hands, then stepped out of the room. Father had really left. Xiao Tao waited a long time for him to return, then slowly picked up the spoon and ate. The gentle sweetness of rice blended with rich milk. Before she could even savor the flavor, it slid smoothly down her throat. It tasted incredible, the most delicious porridge she'd ever had. Spoonful after spoonful, she ate until she was half full without realizing it. With every bite, a little more strength returned to her weak, aching limbs. An egg appeared at the bottom of the bowl as she dug deeper. In this famine year, Chickens had stopped laying eggs entirely. Where had this come from? Xiao Tao wondered. The egg white was tender, the yolk rich and savory. Father hadn't tasted an egg in ages either. She didn't finish it all, saving half for him outside the room. I'm full, Father. She called out in a thin, hoarse voice worn raw by fever. A moment later, the curtain lifted and Carpenter Zhang took the bowl outside. Xiao Tao's heart twisted with anxiety. She'd always thought Father disliked her. Her mother hadn't been from Qing Kingdom, but a local woman from Peachtree Village. Father hadn't married her out of affection. He'd pulled her from the river when she'd fallen in by accident. Peachtree Village shunned outsiders. Even though Father had saved her mother, her uncles had never accepted him. Every time they saw him, they hurled insults, calling him a lowly man who'd tricked their sister. Their words were vicious and cruel. Yet Father never reacted, always standing stone-faced, letting them shout and even strike him without resistance. Xiao Tao knew the truth, though. It was her mother who'd clung to him, forcing him to take responsibility for her and their child. During the famine, Father had scrimped on every scrap of food, going hungry himself to feed Xiao Tao and her mother. Still, her mother had fallen ill and passed away. Now Xiao Tao was sick too, and Father grew thinner by the day. There was no grain to be found anywhere. How had he gotten rice and an egg? Her head spun with fever. She suddenly remembered rumors that people could trade goods for food by working as cooks or butchers. A jolt of fear shot through her. Could Father have traded something precious of his own to get this porridge and egg for her? Her heart hammered wildly. She dragged herself out of bed and peeked quietly toward the kitchen through the window. There he was, holding the empty bowl and licking the bottom clean again and again. The bowl shone so bright you could see your reflection in it, yet he kept licking away every last trace of porridge. Tears flooded Xiao Tao's eyes at once. She clamped a hand over her mouth and stumbled back to bed, curling into a tight ball. Her breath burned hot as she exhaled. Tears streamed nonstop down her cheeks. She regretted eating so much of the thick porridge. Father already suffered so much, and she only added to his burdens. She was nothing but a burden to him. Her illness would take her just like it had taken Mother. There was no hope for her. Night fell. Carpenter Zhang reached out to press a palm to Xiao Tao's forehead as she slept. Her fever still hadn't broken. If it continued like this, the heat would damage her mind. For the first time, clear worry etched itself onto his normally impassive face. Bamboo Village, ghost. Qingge nearly screamed in fright at the man standing before her. Songjin quickly stepped forward to introduce him gently to Qingge. Princess, this is the carpenter I told you about, Zhang Shi, known as Carpenter Zhang. A carpenter? Qingge blinked and pulled up the system page listing her staff. Sure enough, a new name had appeared. Zhang Shi, carpenter, daily wage, 60 coins. Qingge laughed awkwardly. It's no wonder I was startled. Your hair's so long I mistook you for a wandering ghost. Is it a hairpiece? She asked curiously. Carpenter Zhang instinctively glanced toward Songjin, who also stared blankly, confused about what a hairpiece might be. Thud. Carpenter Zhang dropped straight to his knees before Qingge. His face turned bright red as he struggled to speak. Cut. Qingge ducked back, patting her chest lightly. Thank goodness she'd stepped aside fast. Being knelt to so abruptly always made her feel undeserving of such deference. Shi Rongji had also gotten a fright from Carpenter Zhang's sudden gesture. Songjin hurried to pull him to his feet, her mind racing to figure out what had confused the princess. The princess must be confused about men wearing long hair. In Peachtree Village, every person, man or woman, kept their hair long. But in the immortal realm, men seemed to cut their hair short. A hairpiece must mean a wig. Songjin explained, it's not a wig. If the princess dislikes long hair, he can cut it short. Qingge waved a hand dismissively. There's no need for that. I don't care for rigid rules. Long or short hair is just personal preference, and I respect all choices. Just one thing, please stop kneeling every time you speak to me. Qingge set her features into a serious expression. By now, she'd grown used to being called princess, but the sudden sight of people dropping to their knees still caught her off guard. It seemed to have become a strange routine for every new worker she met. As expected, the carpenter was extremely thin too, his cheeks sunken and his eyes hollow from years of hardship. A clear sign of a laborer trapped in endless poverty. You're far too thin, Qingge muttered, a strong urge to feed him well rising inside her. She couldn't bear seeing anyone live in such deprivation. All the abundant supplies of the modern world existed so people could eat their fill. Seeing him so gaunt made her heart ache. Let's have breakfast. Shiromji immediately hurried to the kitchen to cook, knowing the princess was not skilled at preparing meals for herself. Chinga spoke generously, add an extra pack of instant noodles and 2 more eggs. She'd restocked heavily at the supermarket the day before. Soon, steaming bowls of instant noodles were set out on the table. Thick clouds of savory steam blurred Carpenter Zhang's vision. He could hardly believe he would sit at the same table as the princess, eating the exact same food as her. His bowl was the largest of the 4, piled high with more noodles than anyone else's. Princess, Carpenter Zhang stared at the tabletop, unable to lift his eyes to Qin-go. Part of it was his strict adherence to the rigid class divide. The other part was Qin-ji's simple modern clothing, which he feared might be disrespectful to stare at. You think you can't sit at the table with me, don't you? You believe commoners shouldn't eat the same food as their ruler, right? Annoyance flickered across Qin-ji's face. Carpenter Zhang's head shot up in shock. How had she known exactly what he'd been about to say? Qin-ge slammed her chopsticks down on the table, her tone sharp. I'm the boss here. Everyone follows my rules. I say you eat at this table, so you eat here. She was genuinely frustrated by the deeply ingrained old-fashioned beliefs etched into their minds like unbreakable rules. It was no wonder their villages struggled with poverty. Qin-ge turned to Songjin. You recruited him, you sort this out. Songjin bowed her head, filled with guilt. I shall, princess. Shiromji held her breath, intimidated by the princess's imposing aura when angered. Enough of this, eat, Qin-ge ordered. The 3 finally picked up their chopsticks and began their meal. This broth tastes incredible. Shiromji sipped the soup and gasped in amazement. The noodles have such a wonderful springy texture. Songjin slurped and marveled. As for Zhongshi, he couldn't stop eating, hunched over his bowl and shoveling noodles down quickly. He knew the princess's food could not be taken back to Peachtree Village, so he would eat every bite here. That way, he could skip meals once he returned home, leaving all the food for Xiao Tao. This rich, delicious noodle soup must be food reserved for emperors. How could ordinary servants like them be allowed to taste it? A heavy sense of guilt weighed on him. All 3 looked close to tears over the simple meal. Qin-ge stared in surprise. Clearly they had never experienced modern food seasonings before. She explained to them, these are marvels of modern industrial production. Flavor enhancers make the noodles rich by design. Qin-ge shook her head silently. Her staff really had no experience of modern conveniences. They were overjoyed by such simple convenience food. They were far too easy to look after. Carpenter Zhang, could you check which parts of the house need renovation and repairs? Qin-ge asked once breakfast finished. The princess had spoken to him with polite respect? Carpenter Zhang's face burned bright red. He was normally quiet, barely able to utter more than a word or 2. But the moment woodwork was mentioned, he seemed to unlock a flood of words, speaking quickly and passionately about his craft. Tenon and mortise joints, relief carvings, dugong brackets, gold detailing, mother-of-pearl inlay, lacquer finishing. Qin-ji's head spun as she listened, barely able to follow the technical terms. Songjin stepped in to interrupt Zhongshi. Speak simply. Just tell us what needs fixing and what materials will be required. Zhongshi circled the wooden house again and again, like an ant discovering a pile of grain. All this timber is excellent quality. He pointed to the roof beams. This is cypress wood. It can withstand wind and rain for 1,000 years without rotting, sturdy and stable. He gestured to the support pillars thicker than a man's waist. This is pear wood, 100 years old at least, extremely dense and hard. He tapped the supporting beam, which emitted a clear, resonant thud. He stroked the timber tenderly, as if holding a sleeping infant. It pained him to see such precious wood left to decay without care. His hands itched to get to work restoring it. Qin-ge had never known her grandmother's old wooden house held such valuable lumber. Her grandmother had never told her a word about it. Can you fix this? Qin-ge pointed to a damaged upturned roof eave. This section is broken. It holds up fine on sunny days, but rain blows inside when it storms. I asked other craftsmen before, and none of them knew how to repair this ancient traditional architecture. She did not hold out much hope. Zhongshi nodded firmly. I only need the proper tools. Qin-ge was stunned. Thin as he looked and still young, he could repair complex dugong structures? Truly skilled craftsmen hid among ordinary villagers. Will an electric saw work? I also have hand planes. Her grandmother's storage shed was full of old carpentry tools. And she'd dug out the electric saw the day before just in case it was needed today. Qin-ge flipped the saw's power switch. The machine roared to life, its chains spinning wildly. All three others paled at the harsh noise. Shirongji swayed unsteadily, clinging to the wooden railing to avoid falling to her knees in shock. A divine tool. Qingge didn't catch his quiet exclamation. It's nothing magical, it just runs on electricity. Electric power makes work far more efficient. Hand saws waste so much time. She turned to Zhang Shi. Can you work with this? Excitement lit up Zhang Shi's face. Absolutely. He would soon be one of the few people to have used such a wondrous tool. If you need any other materials or tools, tell me and I will source them all. Zhang Shi glanced around the house once more. 3 areas require renovation and repair work. First, all the wooden furniture inside is made of red sandalwood. It needs refinishing with hot wax treatment, which requires beeswax. Qingge said, I don't have beeswax right now, but I can buy some. A villager keeps beehives. I'll ask the village chief later. They will surely sell some to me. Second, the entire house frame needs restoration, which requires tung oil. Qingge nodded. We can get tung oil later. Let's start with the furniture refinishing first. There were 18 rooms in total, and waxing every piece would take at least a week. Third, the damaged dugong brackets need replacement cypress timber. Buying large quantities of lumber would cost a fair amount of money, but Qingge remembered her grandmother saying the mountain behind the village was covered mostly with pine and cypress trees. Qingge smiled. None of these issues will be difficult to resolve. Once he finished listing all the renovation requirements, Zhang Shi fell back into his usual silent, reserved state. Without the necessary materials on hand, he could not begin work yet. He silently fetched a cleaning cloth and bucket of water, joining Shirongji and Songjin to tidy the rooms. Qingge tried to stop him. You're hired as a carpenter, cleaning is not part of your job duties. Zhang Shi gripped the cloth tightly, head hung low, his face flushed without a single word leaving his lips. Very well then, Qingge relented, unable to persuade him otherwise. But understand this, even if you take on extra chores, I will not raise your wage. To her surprise, Zhang Shi did not look discouraged at all. Instead, he straightened up with renewed vigor. I understand. His reply boomed loudly. Qingge blinked in confusion. Were all the staff the system assigned her this odd? She'd never met anyone so eager to work tirelessly. How had the system found so many people desperate to prove their worth through endless labor? This old wooden house had been passed down to Qingji's grandmother from her own elders. Though worn and weathered, it covered a full 2 mu of land. Excluding the rooms Qingge already occupied, the remaining 18 chambers varied greatly in size. The smallest spanned 20 to 30 square meters, and the largest reached 70 to 80 square meters. After hearing Zhang Shi explain the value of the home's timber, Qingge grew eager to see the natural rich grain of the wood once the renovation was complete. While the 3 workers tidied the house, Qingge headed out to speak with the village chief about purchasing beeswax. Songjin pulled Shirongji aside for a private word. Songjin, can you cook? Shirongji, I know a little bit. It was rare for women to lack basic cooking skills in this world. Almost all girls learn to prepare meals to care for their families later in life, save for noble ladies sheltered from household labor. Songjin, spend less time on cleaning chores from now on. Use your spare time to prepare all 3 daily meals for the princess. Me? Shirongji pointed to herself, utterly astonished. Would the princess not grow tired of her simple cooking after a few days? After all, back then, all their meals were carefully prepared by professional head chefs. Songjin turned to Shirongji and asked, if you aren't going to cook, do you expect the boss to prepare food for us? That's not what I meant at all. Shirongji's cheeks flushed pink. She loved waiting on the boss hand and foot, yet she thought herself clumsy and unrefined. She felt unworthy of making the boss settle for simple meals. Why don't we hire Chef Li to come help? Shirongji asked in confusion. Songjin spoke gently, the boss is a little tight on funds right now. She had just asked Qingge if they should hire a dedicated cook, and Qingge had paused to think it over. Not for the time being, Qingge had said. Hiring a full-time chef just to tend to her daily meals felt far too extravagant. Though they still slipped into calling her princess out of old habit, acting as if she truly held royal status clashed with modern social values. It wasn't that Qingge disliked the idea of having someone to cook, she simply couldn't make a proper meal on her own. But paying regular wages meant frequent trips into town to buy supplies, which cost extra money. Her current stock of provisions was enough for now, yet constant restocking would become a hassle eventually. She couldn't keep borrowing village chief Su's tricycle every time she needed to head into town. Without a private vehicle or steady stream of income, hiring multiple staff members would place too heavy a financial burden on her. For now, they would make do with simple home cooking. Songjin nodded in understanding. They would wait to bring Lee Dolly on board later. Shirongji scratched her head, convinced that Lee Dolly would gladly work even without receiving a salary. Meanwhile, Chin-ge had already tracked down Village Chief Su and laid out what she needed. Beeswax? Uncle Su immediately replied, "Old man Lu at the village entrance keeps beehives and sells honey. I'm sure he'll have beeswax to sell too. Let me walk you over there to check." Chin-ge brightened with excitement. "Thank you, Uncle Su. I brought cash with me just in case." She hadn't expected the matter to resolve so easily. Uncle Su smiled warmly. Old man Lu suffered from bad legs and rarely left the village, making it hard for him to sell his honey. If Chin-ge bought his goods, the elderly man would have an easier time getting by. And if Chin-ge truly followed through with her rural business venture, she could help support the whole village. When they reached Old Man Lu's courtyard, loud shouting erupted from inside the house. "You're shameless. 10 yuan a kilogram? You might as well rob me blind. Get out. Leave my property at once." The sound of crashing dishes and thrown containers followed the elderly man's furious roar. "Ouch!" Su Foxing clutched his forehead and stumbled out of Old Man Lu's room. He froze when he spotted Chin-ge, his face twisting into an awkward grimace. His clothes were crumpled all over, and his hair stood messy on end. Chin-ge let out an unreserved laugh. "You haggled the price down so ruthlessly, Old Man Lu showed remarkable restraint not landing you in the clinic." Su Foxing had always rubbed her the wrong way, and she long wanted to call him out for his pettiness. She never imagined Old Man Lu would stand up and vent that frustration on her behalf. Her eyes crinkled into cheerful crescents. "Didn't you get enough of making a spectacle of yourself at the market? Now you've come to embarrass yourself at Old Man Lu's doorstep." Su Foxing brushed imaginary dust off his clothing with a false air of composure. "What brings you here?" Chin-ge let out a scoff. "The same reason you're here. How can you bring yourself to offer a measly 10 yuan per kilogram?" Chin-ge hadn't intended to lose her temper with Su Foxing. He was nothing more than a trivial troublemaker. But his greed knew no bounds. He squeezed every penny he could out of others, far worse than the most exploited laborer from old folktales. He truly thought everyone around him was gullible. "That's always been the going rate for years," Su Foxing argued. Chin-ge grew impatient with his excuses. "If Old Man Lu refuses to sell to you, leave immediately and stop squawking here." Su Fengxing's expression darkened, and he stepped forward toward her. "What are you planning to do? Are you looking for a fight?" Village Chief Su quickly stepped between Chin-ge and Su Fengxing to shield her. Su Fengxing had a volatile temper, and Uncle Su feared he would hold a grudge against Chin-ge for defending Old Man Lu. Su Fengxing rolled his eyes dismissively. "Do I look like someone who resorts to physical brawls?" He suddenly shifted into a slick grin directed at Chin-ge. "Boss Chin, could I ask you something?" He'd addressed her as boss, which meant whatever he wanted to ask carried weight. Aside from money, the only other thing he cared deeply about was his wife. Chin-ge's eyes flickered with knowing amusement. "You want to ask about purchasing manager Wang at your company, don't you?" Su Foxing clapped his hands together in surprise. "Exactly." Chin-ge already knew what he sought to learn, and she turned toward Village Chief Su. "I just need a moment to speak with him privately." She walked a short distance away with Su Foxing, crossing her arms and facing him calmly. "What do you want to know?" Su Foxing ground his teeth together, voice sharp with resentment. "Tell me every single detail you know about Manager Wang." In his pursuit of answers regarding his wife, he was willing to set aside the humiliation Chin-ge and Old Man Lu had just dealt him. Chin-ge tilted the corner of her mouth upward. It seemed he'd finally suspected his wife was growing close to another man. "I'll tell you everything on one condition. Stop spying on me for your Uncle Chin Xiong from this point onward." "I can't do that," Su Fengxing refused outright. Chin-ge shrugged, uncooperative. "Then we have nothing more to discuss. Are you determined to laugh at my misfortune?" Su Foxing snapped. Chin-ge spread her hands wide. "Your troubles hardly need me to highlight them. Get your priorities straight. You're the one begging for information right now, and you ought to show a little respect." Su Fengxing's temper flared, his face burning red with agitation. Had his wife truly grown fond of another man behind his back? Chin-ge watched him placidly, fully aware he would never endure the shame for long. He took pride in only two things, his stable office job and his young, attractive wife. Though his wife was beautiful, he was hardly a fitting match for her. Qin Ji's gaze drifted to his protruding beer belly as the thought crossed her mind. Sure enough, Su Foxing couldn't suppress his anxiety. His eyes darted as he proposed a compromise. I'm still ordered to keep tabs on you. It's part of my job, and my month-end bonus depends on reporting your movements to the Qin family. But I can warn you in advance about all the plans Qin Zixing has to interfere with your homestay. Deal, Qin Gu agreed without hesitation. Su Foxing could dig up details about his wife's closeness with manager Wang on his own over time, but trading this intel to turn him into an inside informant was a valuable win for her. Su Foxing couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. Qin Gu, your own uncle runs a successful city company. How did you end up worse off than someone like me? Life in the big city would have suited you far better. Moving back to the countryside to live among these backward villagers leaves you with no prospects, and everyone will look down on you. Qin Gu let out a cold laugh. Do you own the entire Pacific Ocean, that you feel entitled to meddle in everyone's business? Su Foxing bit back his anger, forcing a neutral tone. I'm only saying this for your own good. Qin Gu cut him off sharply. Do you still want to find out who's grown close to your wife or not? Su Foxing swallowed his pride and hung his head. Speak. Qin Gu delivered the information slowly and deliberately. His name is Wang Jiangtao, the purchasing officer in charge of lighting fixtures. He's married, but the couple has no children. The second the words left her mouth, Su Fengxing's face flushed bright crimson with rage. That treacherous woman. How dare she grow close to him behind my back? Qin Gu frowned and cautioned him. Don't act recklessly. If he flew into a violent rage and dragged her into the mess, neither he nor his wife would escape serious trouble. It was unclear whether Su Foxing had absorbed her warning. He stormed off muttering angry curses under his breath. Did Su Foxing give you any trouble? Village Chief Su walked over, his voice laced with concern. A faint smile tugged at Qin Ji's lips. He's the one with far bigger troubles to worry about. Old man Lu shuffled unsteadily out from the inner room. Did someone come to buy honey? Qin Gu stared at the elderly man. He looked to be 70 or 80 years old, a tiny hunched figure with a severe spinal curvature that left him stooped short. Worst of all, one of his legs was lame, making every step across the threshold a labored struggle. Qin Gu glanced into his living quarters through the open doorway. The room received almost no natural light. Village Chief Su leaned in and lowered his voice to explain. His son worked construction out of town and fell from a building on the job. To make matters worse, the contractor went bankrupt afterward, so the promised workplace compensation was never paid out. I see, Qin Gu murmured. Tragedies like this were far too common in rural villages. Outsiders hearing the story would only sigh and dismiss it as cruel luck. All living beings carried their own heavy burdens, and no one's life came without hardship. Even so, seeing this frail elder strain to tend beehives to scrape by filled Qin Ji's heart with tangled sorrow. Anyone with a shred of compassion would feel moved witnessing such hardship. Good afternoon, Sir Liu. I've come to purchase beeswax, and I'd also like to buy some honey as well. Qin Gu stepped forward and greeted him politely. Village Chief Su introduced her to the elder. This young lady is Qin Gu. She quit her city job to start a business here in the village, and she's come to buy beeswax to renovate her old ancestral home. Hello, Sir Liu, Qin Gu repeated gently. Unlike his hostile reaction towards Su Foxing, the old man grew flustered and rubbed his hands nervously together. I have plenty of both. Please come inside to see if it's what you need. He repeated the word plenty 3 times in quick succession. Qin Gu followed him into the dim inner room. Old man Lu apologized awkwardly. Pardon the mess in here. Scattered scraps of paper and 2 chipped enamel mugs littered the floor. Seeing how difficult it was for the elder to bend down, Qin Gu knelt to tidy the debris for him. Earlier, after witnessing his explosive temper with Su Foxing, she'd worried she would face the same sharp hostility. Instead, the elder only reserved his anger for those who tried to cheat him out of fair payment. There was a quiet warmth to this stubborn old man. The scraps scattered on the floor were not ordinary waste paper. They were rough scratch sheets. One side was covered in high school math equations, the other filled with neatly copied English vocabulary words, written in an elegant, tidy script. Did a high school student live here? Qin Gu lifted her gaze and saw the walls plastered wall to wall with golden certificates of merit. Awards spanned kindergarten, primary school, junior high, and senior high, covering exam top rankings and various academic competitions alike. One layer covered the wall, with a second layer stacked neatly over the first. Qin Gu stepped closer to examine them. All the awards belonged to a boy named Lu Rue, who consistently took first place in every contest and exam. Sir Lu, are these certificates for your grandson? Qin Ge asked curiously. Once the topic shifted to his grandson, the formerly reserved elder lit up and spoke at length. They belong to my grandson Lu Rue. He's 17 this year, studying in the 3rd year of senior high school in the city, a top-tier student, through and through. Proudly speaking of his outstanding grandson, the elder's hunched back straightened a fraction, and light returned to his weathered, sun-darkened face. I never need to fret over his studies. He takes first place every single semester without fail. All his teachers praise his sharp mind. He's a born scholar. I only hope I live long enough to save up enough money to cover Rue's university tuition fees. Deep pride radiated from Old Man Lu's face. He'll be the first college graduate our Lu family has ever had. A college student. Could he and his grandfather truly survive solely off honey sold for low prices? Watching the quiet, proud smile on Old Man Lu's face, Qin Ji's heart felt heavy with sympathy. The elder continued rambling about his grandson's countless academic achievements, his clouded eyes shining bright with joy as he recounted the boy's successes. Qin Ge could feel the boundless, tender love he held for Lu Rue. She leaned toward village chief Su and whispered quietly, "What happened to the boy's mother?" "She passed away from cancer," Uncle Su replied. His father took the dangerous construction job just to scrape together enough money for her medical bills. Construction labor was grueling and risky, yet it paid faster than factory work. A wave of melancholy washed over Qin Ge. Old Man Lu remained cheerful, every other sentence centered around how remarkable his grandson was. "All my honey and beeswax are laid out right here," the elder gestured to the goods spread across a wooden table. Qin Ge inspected the products closely. The honey was premium quality, rich with a pure wild floral aroma, clear and thick with a warm amber hue. The beeswax was equally top grade, white beeswax bright and unmarred by yellow blemishes, yellow beeswax vivid and evenly toned. Its quality surpassed many well-known commercial honey brands. Old Man Lu was a truly skilled, dedicated beekeeper. Qin Ge weighed her needs mentally. "I'll take 10 jin of wildflower honey and 20 jin of beeswax." She hadn't originally planned to purchase honey, yet the quality was too exceptional to pass up. It would serve her well for personal consumption or as supplementary staff wages later on. Old Man Lu looked sheepish, stating his prices. Wildflower honey is 60 yuan per jin, yellow beeswax 50 yuan per jin, white beeswax 60 yuan per jin. Single flower honey runs 100 yuan a jin, and I also have Cotinopsis root honey, excellent for nourishing the body, though it's pricier at 200 yuan per jin. His pricing was entirely reasonable, even slightly under market value. Fearing Qin Ge would think it too expensive, the elder hurried to add an explanation. "I'm not trying to overcharge you. My honey is absolutely worth every penny. I tend to every single beehive myself from dawn till dusk, without cutting corners." He patted his lame right leg gently. "This leg got injured years ago when I trekked deep into the mountains to locate fresh flower nectar sources for the hives." Qin Ge considered for a moment before speaking. "Your prices are completely fair. The problem is simply that too few buyers recognize fine honey when they see it. I'll take 10 jin of wildflower honey and 20 jin of yellow beeswax today. I'll come back to buy more from you in the future if the opportunity arises. That totals 1,600 yuan, and I'll pay you in cash right now." Old Man Lu's face bloomed into a shy, delighted grin, crinkling the wrinkles around his eyes like chrysanthemum petals. "Thank you so much, young lady." Gratitude filled his heart. Rarely did customers come to buy in bulk without haggling, and even fewer could appreciate the true quality of his honey. He hadn't encountered such a fair buyer in many years. "We're simply exchanging goods for fair payment. No need to thank me," Qin Ge said softly. "If your honey were poor quality, I wouldn't purchase a drop of it." Village Chief Su let out a relieved breath beside them. He'd been the one to bring Qin Ge to the elder's home, and he'd worried he disappointed the old man if Qin Ge found the honey unsatisfactory. "Grandpa, I'm home." Before they finished finalizing the purchase, a clear young male voice echoed from the courtyard gate. A teenage boy dressed in blue and white school uniform stepped inside, tall, lean, with lightly tanned skin and brilliantly bright eyes. A smattering of faint freckles dotted the bridge of his nose, lending him a bright, clean, handsome aura that clashed with expectations of a top academic prodigy. "Grandpa, who's this?" Lu Rue hesitated as he glanced at Qin Ge. "This young lady has come to buy honey from us," Old Man Lu told him joyfully. I've scraped together enough money for your senior high supplementary study materials at last. Now you can attend Teacher Zhang's tutoring class alongside all your classmates. Lu Rui set down his backpack and the luggage sack he'd carried, greeting Qin and Village Chief Su politely. Hello, Boss Qin. Hello, Uncle Su. Village Chief Su nodded in response. Qin smiled gently. Just call me by my given name, no need to address me as boss. All right, Sister Qin, Lu Rui amended respectfully. The elder's spirits lifted seeing his grandson return home. He immediately reached out to take Lu Rui's backpack, chattering nonstop as he asked about school life. Had any classmates bullied him? Was his coursework overly taxing? Did he have enough pocket money to get by? We have this young lady Qin to thank. She bought over 1,600 yuan worth of honey and wax all at once. Qin shifted awkwardly. There's no need to thank me. Your honey speaks for itself. Lu Rui's gaze carried sincere gratitude as he bowed deeply toward her. Thank you. He turned and bowed again to Village Chief Su. Thank you, Village Chief, for always looking after my grandfather. Village Chief Su grew flustered and hurried to steady the boy. No need for such formal bows, child. Neighbors look out for one another. It's only natural. Qin stared at the crown of Lu Rui's head as he bowed, a strange feeling tugging at her thoughts. Rui, today isn't a school holiday. Why have you come back home? Qin asked. Third-year senior high students almost never received full days off, even during official breaks. Lu Rui straightened up and smiled, revealing two sharp little canine teeth that made him look both endearing and handsome. Grandpa, I've made up my mind. I'm dropping out of school to stay home and help you tend the beehives. Old man Lu froze completely for a full minute. What did you just say? Lu Rui repeated firmly, I spoke with my head teacher. She said she can file an application, so I'll still receive my graduation certificate without sitting the college entrance exam. The revelation struck like thunder. Crack. Old man Lu delivered a sharp slap across Lu Rui's cheek. Say that again. You're giving up your chance to take the exam. The elder trembled all over with overwhelming grief and rage. A clear palm print bloomed across Lu Rui's cheek, yet his smile never faded. I don't want to study anymore. It feels meaningless. Old man Lu hunched forward, scanning the room frantically for his wooden walking cane. I'll beat some sense into you. He seized the cane and swung it hard at Lu Rui's body. Lu Rui stood rigid, making no move to dodge the blows. Go ahead and beat me if it makes you feel better. Qin and Village Chief Su snapped into action to pull them apart. Village Chief Su lunged forward, wrapping his arms around Old Man Lu and wrestling the cane from his grip. Don't strike the boy. His grades are extraordinary. He wouldn't throw away his education without good reason. There must be some misunderstanding here. Lu Rui insisted flatly, there's no misunderstanding. I truly don't want to continue my studies. Qin tugged his arm and led him outside the house. Do you intend to break your grandfather's heart completely? Lu Rui froze mid-step, the stubborn rigidity draining from his limbs as Qin pulled him out into the courtyard. He's grown restless and lost motivation to study. He must have picked up bad habits and started dating some girl. Old man Lu's aged, mournful voice carried clearly through the open doorway. I sacrificed everything to raise this boy, and he tosses away his future without a second thought. Qin and Lu Rui standing outside heard every broken word. After walking a short distance away from the house, Qin released his arm and stopped to face him. Your academic record is flawless and you're certain to gain admission to an outstanding university. Why would you choose to drop out now? The teenager hung his head, his voice muffled and heavy. I'm simply burnt out from studying. Qin felt frustration bubble up inside her. Your grandfather's entire hope rests on you passing the college exam and bringing pride to your family. You're his greatest source of joy. Don't feed me that thin lie about being burnt out. Lu Rui fell silent, his bangs falling forward to shield his eyes from her gaze. Qin shifted to a softer, more persuasive tone. Is it because watching your grandfather struggle to support you with beekeeping pains you, and you refuse to keep spending his hard-earned money? Lu Rui still said nothing. Qin reasoned with him patiently. If you'd truly grown tired of school, you would have quit long ago. It makes no sense to abandon your studies mere months before the national college entrance exam. Are you worried about affording university tuition? Qin watched his expression closely and pressed on. Once you gain admission, you can apply for government student loans. Top-performing students also qualify for generous academic grants. You can take after-school tutoring or part-time work to cover daily expenses. University life wouldn't weigh you down nearly as much as you fear. I don't care about university or the exam anymore. Lu Rui suddenly lifted his head and burst out. Even if I graduate from college, there's no guarantee I'll land a well-paying job, only earning a few thousand yuan a month after wasting 4 full years of my life studying. Can my grandfather even wait 4 more years for me to graduate? Tears welled up in the teenager's eyes, his voice cracking with suppressed emotion. I don't want to be a burden to Grandpa. All I want is to stay by his side and keep him company. He's endured far too much hardship all alone. A single tear slipped down his cheek. It's my turn to repay everything he's done for me. A burden to his grandfather? Chinga fell silent, understanding the heavy knot weighing on Lu Rui's heart. She sat down on the grass and patted the empty patch beside her, gesturing for the boy to sit. Lu Rui swiped away his tears and lowered himself onto the grass beside her. I completely understand your desire to stay close to your grandfather, Chinga told him gently. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself if your grandfather would ever accept you giving up your education for his sake? Lu Rui pressed his lips into a thin, tight line, the red palm mark from the slap still vivid across his cheek, his posture radiating unyielding stubbornness. Chinga let out a quiet sigh. Given how deeply your grandfather hopes to see you attend university, he would never rest in peace knowing you abandoned your future for him. Lu Rui said emotionally, I know, but I have no other choice. I just can't accept it. His voice cracked with sobs all of a sudden. The tree craves stillness, yet the wind rages on. The son longs to care for his parents, yet they are gone. Chinga understood exactly how he felt. The deeper one's love, the sharper the grief. You're still young and lack life experience. Your journey stretches far ahead, and you can't foresee what the future holds, Chinga told him. Lu Rui's voice thick with nasal congestion, he shot back, You're not that much older than me anyway. Chinga felt challenged by this young lad. I'm still older than you. Academic degrees may seem unimportant these days, but what truly matters is the capability forged through life experience. She posed a question to him. What skills do you think you can develop by staying cooped up in this mountain village raising bees? Lu Rui opened his mouth to reply, but Chinga held up a hand to stop him. There's no conflict between going to university and staying to look after your grandfather. The key university downtown is only an hour's high-speed rail ride away. You can be back in half a day at most. You can come visit your grandfather every weekend, during winter and summer breaks and all public holidays. You'll get to care for him, and he'll be overjoyed to see you pursue your studies too. Lu Rui hesitated. Even with student loans, living costs add up. Trips back and forth leave no time for part-time work. Seeing his stance soften, Chinga smiled. There are countless online side jobs available. As long as you pick up practical skills, you'll always find a way to earn money. Besides, I've got some good news for you. Once my homestay opens, I'll make a fixed purchase agreement for all the honey your grandfather produces. That way, you won't have to worry too much about money. Lu Rui's eyes lit up instantly, and he lifted his head abruptly. Sister Chinga, do you really mean you'll buy Grandpa's honey regularly? Old Master Lu's honey was of excellent quality. Once the homestay opened, it would be perfect for beverages, desserts, and packaged agricultural souvenirs alike. This had long been Chinji's plan. But there's one condition, and it concerns you, Chinga said, glancing at his swollen cheek. Lu Rui asked, You want me to go back to school? Chinga nodded, then shook her head. It's not just going back to school. After you graduate and come home, you'll work for my farmstead. I truly believe in your potential. Chinga smiled gently. You've always been the top student in your grade year after year. You'll definitely be a huge help to me. She wasn't running a charity. She wouldn't offer support without any return. What's more, renovating the homestay required funds at every turn. Her promise to buy honey regularly would be a steady ongoing expense. The pressure weighing on Chingu was substantial. Whether for her own sake or those around her, the homestay had to succeed once it opened. Failure was not an option. Lu Rui stared intently at Chingu, his eyes trembling with emotion. He knew she was taking a big risk by making such an offer. This elder sister, only 5 years his senior, possessed such courage and boldness to start a business back in the countryside. She was truly remarkable. Bathed in sunlight on the green meadow, Chingu was wrapped in a faint golden glow. Lu Rui could even make out the fine downy hairs on her cheeks. She looked beautiful. Back inside old Master Lu's cottage, Uncle Su had calmed the elderly man down considerably. He was no longer seething with rage as before. Yet his expression remained dark, and he sat stiffly at the table. What's going on? Lu Rui bowed his head deeply. Grandpa, I was wrong. I thought about things the wrong way. I'll head back to school right away. Old Master Lu slammed his cane hard against the floor. You're not leaving. Lu Rui flinched. When he'd stood firm earlier, the cane blows hadn't stung so badly. Now that his temper had cooled, his face and body burned with sharp pain. Seeing this, Uncle Su stepped in to mediate. The boys already apologized. Why frighten him like that? Old Master Lu spoke softly. My dear grandson, don't head back to school today. Your face is still swollen. The other students will laugh at you. Rest and heal up first. I'll slaughter a chicken to make nourishing soup for you. You've endured endless exams at school. You must be worn thin. Look how scrawny you've gotten. He stood and patted Lu Rui's shoulder. My good boy, you've grown taller than your grandfather now. It's my fault for losing my temper and striking you. Your parents are far away, and I've been so wrapped up in beekeeping that I haven't paid enough attention to you. Don't hold this old man's outbursts against me. Tears streamed down Lu Rui's face, dripping off his chin one after another. Grandpa. He threw his arms tightly around Old Master Lu. Chinga bought the honey and beeswax, settling the payment with Old Master Lu. Lu Rui volunteered to carry the jars of honey and blocks of beeswax back to Chin Ji's old house. As he was about to leave, he spoke up of his own accord. Thank you, Sister Chinga. I'll keep every word you said firmly in mind. Chinga smiled. Don't let me down then. Lu Rui's cheeks flushed pink, his eyes shining bright like a loyal puppy, his tone resolute. I won't, not ever. When Chinga returned home, Songjin, Su Hai and Su Xing had worked together to fully clean one guest room. Is this really the same room from before? Chinga was utterly stunned by how stunning it looked. The furniture remained unchanged, yet just minor rearrangements and a thorough dusting had completely transformed the space. The carved Luhan daybed had been polished until its wood grain stood out clear. Faint golden swirls wound through the timber. Beside the bed stood a multi-compartment curio cabinet, its wood tinted soft violet. When Chinga leaned in to sniff it, a delicate sandalwood scent drifted off its surface. Beneath the window sat a writing desk with a mirror-smooth tabletop. The tabletop reflected the silhouette of the window frame. The windows were carved lattice casement windows. Instead of glass, each grid was fitted with thin polished clamshell translucent panes, layered like silver fish scales, glowing soft and translucent. The three stood with hands folded respectfully, watching Chinga run her hands over the furnishings and gaze around the room again and again. Songjin asked quietly, Princess, are you satisfied? More than satisfied. Chinga nodded repeatedly. This room looked exactly like the elegant boudoirs of ancient noble young ladies. Opening the window revealed a soft landscape worthy of an ink-wash painting, filling the air with fresh, clean breeze. If guests wore traditional ancient-style outfits here, every photograph would turn out perfectly naturally. It's just a touch bare, Chinga muttered, stroking her chin as she thought it through. The plain light bulb hanging from the ceiling clashes with the antique aesthetic of the room. Songjin and Su Xing exchanged a glance. What did antique aesthetic mean? Did she think the room lacked beauty? Songjin ventured a suggestion. We could weave thin willow branches into lampshades, decorated with silk blossoms and tassels. Chinga nodded, then glanced toward the writing desk. This spot here looks empty. We could arrange seasonal fresh flowers there, Songjin replied. Chinga nodded once more, her decorating plan fully forming in her mind. First, complete bedding sets for the beds. Right now there were only bare wooden slats, impossible for guests to sleep on comfortably. She also needed sheer bed curtains and soft cushions to boost both comfort and visual appeal. Second, more decorative accents were needed. Fresh flowers alone wouldn't suffice. Porcelain, pottery, and even jade ornaments would add richness to the space. Last came the washrooms. Every guest room had a designated space for a bathroom, fully plumbed with running water and electricity. But constrained by limited funds, Chinga had only renovated the washroom in her own downstairs bedroom. Fitting out 18 bathrooms with full sanitary fixtures would cost a staggering sum. Did she really have to take out a loan? Chinga was deeply reluctant to go into debt. Lost in tangled thoughts, a mechanical system voice suddenly echoed in her head. A new system quest has been activated. Quest objective: generate a profit of 50,000 yuan using existing resources on the estate. Time limit: 7 days. Reward: complete high-end sanitary suites for all rooms. In the old house.